I am Councillor Marion Ring, Mayor of the Borough of Maidstone, and I am pleased to welcome you to this remote meeting of the Council. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel, and this will include the instant messaging. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening.
Councillor Mackay, I reserve the right to record.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I will now explain how the meeting will be conducted this evening. My role as chairman of the meeting will continue. However, the responsibility for managing the meeting has been temporarily assigned to the Democratic and Electoral Service Manager, who I will refer to as a facilitator. This officer will not steer the debate. He will merely assist in implementing the remote meeting protocols. A Democratic Service Officer is with us to produce the minutes and to provide provide procedural advice as required. I will provide further explanation as we process through the agenda, but members are reminded that instant messaging will be visible to those viewing the meeting and must only be used for raising technical issues, indicating a wish to speak, and raising a point of order or seconding a motion. I will now ask the facilitator to take the attendance register by reading out the list of council members in alphabetical orders. Members should confirm their attendance by answering present.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, members. I will read through the attendance list and I will give the apologies that we are aware of as I go through. There will be an opportunity for apologies to be given where we don't already have them at the appropriate item on the agenda. So, Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Blackmore.
Present.
Councillor Bryce.
Present.
Councillor Brindle.
Present.
Councillor David Burton.
Present.
Councillor Matt Burton.
Present.
Councillor Chapel-Tay.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Cox.
Present.
Councillor Cumming.
Present.
Councillor Daly. Councillor Daly. Councillor Daly was on the call earlier, so I will return.
Right, Ryan, sorry, there's something in the instant messaging saying he has no sound, so he might not be able to hear you.
Okay, we'll see if we can sort that out. Councillor English.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Eaves. Councillor Fermor.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fissenden. Councillor Fissenden.
Present.
Councillor Fort.
Present.
We have a note that Councillor Garland may be late. Councillor Garton.
Good evening, present.
Councillor Gooch.
Good evening. Present.
Councillor Grigg.
Present.
Councillor Harper.
Present and raring to go.
Councillor Harvey. Can I ask all members and guests to please mute their microphones? Thank you. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harwood. Councillor Hasty.
Present.
Councillor Hinder.
Present.
Councillor Joy.
Present.
Councillor Kadka.
Present.
Councillor Kimmins.
Yes, sir, all present.
Councillor Lewins,
Present.
Councillor Mackay,
Present.
Councillor Mortimer,
Present.
Councillor Munford,
Present.
Councillor Nagy,
Present and correct.
Councillor Newton,
Present.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed,
Present.
Councillor Perry,
Present.
Councillor Powell,
Present.
Councillor Pearl,
Present.
Councillor Ring. Councillor Robertson,
Present.
Councillor D. Rose,
Present.
Councillor M. Rose,
Present.
Councillor Round,
Present.
Councillor J. Sams,
Present.
and Councillor T. Sams.
Present.
Councillor Spooner,
Present.
Councillor Springett,
Present.
Councillor Vizard,
Present.
Councillor Webb,
Present.
Councillor de Wigendine Shepherd,
Present.
Councillor Wilby,
Present.
Councillor Young.
Present.
Now I note there's a message from Councillor Daly in the IM, so he is present but has some issues that we're resolving. And then we had, let's just check for Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Harwood. Cannot see Councillor Harwood on the call. I think that's everybody accounted for.
Mr. O'Connell, I have issued Councillor Harvey with the phone number, so he is trying to get in on that as well.
Do you mean Councillor Harwood?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the attendance. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one moment, please, meeting. The Mayor appears to have dropped off the call.
Sorry, everybody. I'm now back. I now ask the facilitator to read out the list of officers present tonight.
Point of order. Are we not doing prayers this evening?
We are, Councillor Mackay, after we've named the officers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, officers present this evening, we have Alison Broom, Chief Executive, William Cornell, Director of Regeneration and Place, Mark Green, Director of Finance and Business Improvement, Steve McGuinness, Mid-Kent Services Director, Patricia Narrabor, Head of Legal Partnership, Angela Woodhouse, Head of Policy Communications and Governance, myself, Ryan O'Connell, the Democratic Electoral Services Manager, and Debbie Snook, Democratic Service Officer and Clerk for the Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So now we go on to item 1. The prayers this evening will be said by the Reverend Joyce Addison of St Martin's Church, Northumberland Road, in our ward, Malcolm and myself of Shetway. And she's more than welcome.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members and officers, and thank you for the invitation to open your meeting with prayer. Let us pray. Loving God, as we prepare to start this meeting, help us to set to one side all of the pressures we have experienced this day so that we can focus on the business at hand. And we pray for our Mayor, for the members, the many officials here present. Thank you for the gifts and talents you have blessed each person with to fulfill their roles. We are living in very challenging times And so I pray for good health so that we can all carry out our work to the best of our abilities. And I pray for patience and understanding in our friendships. Grant all wisdom and courage this evening and going forward to lead this town in the midst of conflicting interests and the issues of our day. I pray for understanding of the welfare and the needs of the people of Maidstone and a passion for justice to be done. And I pray for the agenda this evening and for the various items that need to be discussed and resolved. We ask, Lord, that you shape our conversation, our thinking, and our decisions, that you guide our thoughts to always remember the overlooked, the marginalized, and the forgotten. Draw our decisions to conform to your will that seeks the highest good for all. And above all, bless all who are here present this evening. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much, Reverend Addison, for coming this evening and doing such a lovely prayer. Thank you. I now ask the facilitator to read out the list of apologies received.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have received apologies from Councillors Bartlett and Eves and a notification that Councillor Garland may be late.
Thank you. And just to say, Councillor Bartlett's little baby arrived yesterday. That's all I know. Safe and well. Item 3. Are there any applications for dispensations?
No applications for dispensations received, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Are there any disclosure of disposable pecuniary interest, other significant interest by members? Are there any disclosures by officers? Item 5, the Democratic Electrical Service Manager will ask members in alphabetical order if they have any disclosures of lobbying. They must answer either none or yes and specify the agenda item or items. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Atkinson.
None.
Councillor Blackmore.
Yes, I have been lobbied on one item, which is to do with the call-in.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce.
As per Councillor Blackmore.
Councillor Brindle.
As per the other two.
Councillor David Burton.
On the matter referred from the SPY committee, the local development scheme, I have been lobbied.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Burton.
Yes, I believe items 9, 16 and the items relating to the call-in.
Thank you. Councillor Chapel-Tay.
Sorry, it was on mute. 9, 16 and the call-in.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
No.
Councillor Cox. Councillor Cox. I'll come back to Councillor Cox. Councillor Cumming.
None.
Councillor Daly.
None.
Councillor English.
None.
Councillor Fermor.
None.
Thank you. Councillor Fissenden.
None.
Councillor Fort.
None.
Councillor Garton.
Yes, 9, not so much 9, but 16 certainly. The call in
and local development plan what has been transferred from SPY.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you. Yes, I have item 15 and 17.
Councillor Grigg.
Item 15.
Councillor Harper.
None.
Councillor Harvey.
None.
Councillor Hasty.
None.
Councillor Hinder.
None.
Sorry,
Councillor-
Councillor Harwood is here.
You've joined the meeting. Good evening, Councillor Harwood.
Okay.
Do you have any disclosures?
No, because I don't think so. Thank you.
And no lobbying?
No, I'm aware of none.
Thank you. Councillor Joy.
None.
Councillor Kaka.
None.
Councillor Clements.
Item 16, end of calling.
Councillor Lewins.
None.
Councillor Mackay.
None.
Councillor Mortimer.
None.
Councillor Munford.
Yes, items 15 and 17.
Thank you. Councillor Nagy.
None.
Councillor Newton.
The call in.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid. Councillor Parfitt-Reid. I'll come back. Councillor Perry.
Yes, item 9, 15, 16 and the call in.
Councillor Powell.
Item 9.
Councillor Pearl.
Item 17.
Councillor Ring.
None.
Councillor Robertson.
None.
Councillor D. Rose.
16 and the call in.
Councillor M. Rose.
Only the letter from Marden, which I would prefer not to receive. Thank you very much.
Can I just confirm which item that relates to, please?
The proposed building in Marden.
What bit's
So
that?
I think the packet that we all got.
Does it relate?
All on the local development plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Round.
15, 16 and the call in.
Thank you. Councillor J. Sams.
9 and 15.
Councillor T. Sams.
9 and 15.
Councillor Spooner.
None.
Councillor Springett.
None that I can remember.
Councillor Vizard.
None that I recall.
Councillor Webb.
None.
Councillor Wiggin Shepherd.
9 and 15.
Thank you. Councillor Wilby.
Yes, 9 and 15.
Councillor Young.
None that I can recall.
And now just to check on Councillor Cox.
And now I press the right button. 9, 15, 16, 17 and the call in.
Thank you. And Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Item 15 and the call in.
I believe that concludes the lobbying. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 6. It will be necessary to move into private session if members wish to discuss the information contained in the exempt appendix to item 21 call-in of Policy and Resources Committee decision on property acquisition 1 and 2. A separate meeting has been set up for members to access if required. Item 7 are the minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on the 15th of July 2020 agreed as correct records.
Agreed.
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 Yes, agreed.
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 Thank you, everyone. Mayor's announcements. Well, just very quickly, time is we're starting to get more invites for the mayor, so very nice. But still lots and lots of people very cautious, and I understand that. So now can we go on to item 9, petitions. I have received notification that Mr. Steve Healy wishes to present a petition relating to the house building and infrastructure. Mr. Healy, welcome. You may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, tonight I'd like to present to you a petition titled Enough is Enough on behalf of Save Our Heathlands campaign group. This petition has been signed by thousands of Maidstone's residents, calling on the council to rethink its plans on house building. This petition represents the feelings of many residents across the borough. As you know, Save Our Heathlands is opposing the council's ill-informed proposed garden community at Lenham. However, through our work, we have come to find that there is a lot of opposition to the overall planning approach in this borough. This is where the petition began. Many of the people we have spoken to appear resigned to the fact that this council will carry on regardless with its growth strategy without properly seeking the views of residents and not shaping the plans accordingly. We are calling on all of you as elected members of this borough to hear and listen to our collective voices. Maidstone's residents are saying enough is enough. The petition specifically asks of you to challenge and campaign against national government house building targets. It asks you to rethink the rebuilding of garden communities. We do not believe it's a suitable policy approach for this borough. We don't expect you to accept new housing levels that are unsustainable for Maidstone, and we ask that you're transparent and engaged with parish councils and local communities before any final decisions are made regarding where new development goes. On the housing targets, we're well aware that you've made attempts to challenge the targets imposed already. However, we're underwhelmed by the action to date in the last 9 months, which has constituted a couple of letters to the Secretary of State and a single meeting with civil servants. Instead, we want to hear loud and clear voices against the national targets. We are calling on you tonight to join forces with MPs across Kent, or further, if you feel that's the case, with CALC and with other Kent councils to amplify the opposition to these targets. This petition should act as your mandate to tell Westminster that we, along with many other constituencies across the country, do not agree to this increase, and we want to see this council more aggressively oppose the proposed reforms. On garden communities, we are calling on you to listen to the many residents who are strongly opposing this form of growth. Maidstone's residents do not want new towns built in the middle of the countryside at the expense of hundreds of acres of green field, miles away from main conurbations. Garden communities are not the right solution. They are the right solution in the right place, however. Unfortunately, that's not in Maidstone. Ebbsfleet Garden Community in North Kent is a great example where a disused chalk quarry has been used, Kingshill and Westmoreland where they used a disused airfield. These are all sites which have had former uses and now being regenerated into something else. Unfortunately, Maidstone does not have these types of sites. Instead, the council seems intent on concreting over countryside and green space around the existing rural villages like Lenham and Marden. This is not what residents want. We want you as our elected officials to think harder and smarter for the sake of our children's future. In recent weeks, we've seen and heard many of you protecting your own backyards as part of the local plan review. Deputy Leader Councillor Gooch, for example, voting repeatedly to concrete over 900 acres of countryside in Lenham, but in the next breath asking for protection of the urban fringe in Maidstone. It's simply not good enough to have such a blinkered approach from this council's political leadership. The council has made decades of poor decisions on providing the necessary infrastructure to deal with Maidstone Town Centre to sustainably grow. These poor decisions are now coming home to roost. The solution, however, is not to flood the surrounding rural villages with homes just to get the numbers required. Rural town centres like Lenham are already taking their fair share of new homes, over 1,000 in the next 10 years, almost doubling the size of the village. Urban and suburban parts of the borough have got to do their fair share too. And to do this, the council needs to get serious about its infrastructure strategy to properly unlock growth. The resentment to so many new homes across the borough is because roads cannot cope with existing traffic. The town centre is congested, and this is exacerbated by a lack of serious and credible public transport strategy and ambition. Finally, this petition calls on you to be more transparent and properly engage with parish councils and local communities. Riding roughshod over parish council views and failing to consult the affected communities is a recipe for disaster. Local people must be heard and their wishes must be enacted upon to sustain the local setting they live in. We understand the difficult decisions you're facing to agree a spatial strategy, but your current proposed solutions are not the answer. We call on you to think again, particularly the use of garden communities. Garden communities will become your Achilles heel in your local plan review. I urge you all to read the many comments on the online petition pages to appreciate the real strength of feeling of those you serve. Maidstone's residents are finally saying enough is enough, and I hope you will listen and act on their genuine concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. After the councillors have debated this, you will have a chance of opportunity to come back. I will call you. In accordance with the council procedure rules, the council will now debate the petition with the intention that the petition and the views of the council will then be referred to the appropriate committee. As the petition has more than 1,500 signatures, there will be no time limit on the debate, but using my discretion, I will decide when to draw the discussion to a close. I do believe a factual briefing note have been circulated. Can I have the name of the first person?
I have indicated, Madam Mayor. Have you seen
I'm so sorry, Clive. Yep, I can see it now. Okay, then. Please go ahead.
I think there's no doubt the residents are angry, and I can't say that I blame them, but we do have to distinguish what is the council's possible strategy to deal with this and what isn't. For a start, we are not the Highways Authority, so attacking Maidstone Council for whatever decisions have been made, rightly or wrongly, on transport and road infrastructure is perhaps not hitting the right target. Secondly, the council does not have a strategy for growth. The housing numbers, as have been admitted by the petitioner, have been imposed on this and all other councils by the government across the country, and have caused councils from Maidstone to Chester serious problems. So the issue really shouldn't really be about who is to blame for this, but what we as politicians across the board in Maidstone and in other local authority areas do about it. We have been working with MPs. Most of the local MPs in Kent have actually made strong representations against the proposed changes in government planning policy. And as far as I'm aware, this council has been trying quite hard to work with them. Turning to the details of the local plan, contrary to what has been asserted, the council has not made decisions on garden communities or any other allocations of sites yet. The council, as a landowner, has made a view on a particular proposal, but that is not a proposal that has been adopted by the Strategic Planning Committee yet anyway. So all I would say is this debate has not been closed, decisions have not been made. This council has not closed off discussions with parish councils or with the public and is still engaged in them. And the decisions will be made in the public arena fully, clearly and transparently. And if they're not, you can guarantee I won't be voting for the local plan that is proposed as a result. And that's all I have to say, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor English. Can I call upon Councillor Eddie Powell, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just following on from Councillor English, and yes, I do take on board some of his comments, not all, I hasten to add. If I can take you back a year ago, kind of, Madam Mayor, to when I've been speaking on this subject since it first came about, before we've had people doing kind of petitions. And incidentally, that petition, from what I can understand, was just under 4,500 and still rising, because I understand it is going to continue. That's a lot of people. But one of the questions I first asked was right back when we asked, it seems ages ago now, Barton Wilmore. I said, what on earth is this money which has been given to a company called Barton Wilmore to do a consultancy? At that time, I knew nothing about it at all, other than what I heard in the council that night. Obviously, I was sort of filled in as to some of the detail, again, when I looked in the local media, which rightly or wrongly, but that's where it happened, so somebody must have told them. So then afterwards, I understood that there was a team that was actually being put in place. You know, that team, master developers. So Maidstone were actually kind of going to put in their own people to develop that particular site. And then I was told afterwards, again, when I'm questioned, you know, calm down, Eddie, don't get overexcited. That they're not the exact words, actually. That there is absolutely, that this is just, as Councillor English said, we're just throwing around ideas at the moment. Everything is going out to consultancy. Nothing is definite. I can assure the members here tonight that the discussions have taken a leap into that direction. And if it can, if the Garden Village can be done, then it will be done, because that is the way that the council's leaning towards. So there is nothing about that coming back to SPI committee, because it's going to happen. It is going to happen. And the next thing I understood was, oh yes, we're definitely doing a motorway, an additional motorway services. Okay, fine. That alleviates some of the transport issues. And by the way, we're going to get the rail link to stop at a new station at Lenham. As far as schools are concerned, we'll probably get a new secondary school. At that particular stage, we were looking at 5,000 homes until we found out another item, which was this particular area was part of the Kent Minerals site plan, which straight away we lost 25 acres of land there. So right the way through this whole process, Madam Mayor, we are being
Sorry, you've got 10 seconds left, but go on.
Right,
You're on a roll.
So basically, I'm not happy. I'm delighted with what Mr. Healy said tonight, and I will fully support the petition on behalf of the people of Maidstone. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much. Can I call upon Councillor Tom Sams, please?
Thank you. It's actually Janetta. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Janetta.
No problem. No problem. Just to support the petition, I think the nature of it came out of the frustration felt by residents all over the borough, and for what they see as development without support infrastructure. And I understand obviously what Councillor English is saying, namely housing built unaffordable for local people that does not reflect the needs of the changing face of real family situations. Take Harwich and Lenham and other areas, almost all the housing being built at the moment are larger properties. We need starter homes, 1 or 2 bedroom houses and properties suitable for downsizing. But they need to be built in the right place, near the services that support the residents who'll be living in those types of homes. At the moment, we've got a spectre of clogged roads, schools full, doctor surgeries above practical capacity, and the residents of Maidstone are rightly concerned. And the petition, I think, reflects the borough residents' view that those sort of houses and the garden communities are not the answer. Indeed, I think it's clear that the council's putting in place, they're lining up their ducks, so to speak, as Councillor Powell says, to be over-reliant on the garden communities. And they are being pushed forward as the saviour of our local plan. Yet they risk sinking it. And residents, groups and parish councils, with the information that have produced, are combining and united in their opposition to this. The petition's not about NIMBYism. I think it's collective disquiet with the whole process. And looking through the agenda tonight, we've got a large document on community engagement. So let's make sure that these are not just words. As a great thinker once said, words that do not match deeds are unimportant. We must have that community engagement and we must have the transparency. and we've got to consult with all the groups with our communities, and we've got to share information with those groups, and more importantly, we must listen to those groups. We've been told that Enough is Enough campaign stretches from Detling to Barming and Marden to Lenham Heath. And I think if we were in a different situation, those numbers, 4,000, without the pandemic, it's likely that a petition might have led to calls for a borough referendum on the Enough is Enough. So I suppose I'm urging members to listen to their residents. The petition brings up lots of good points that we can debate. We want to see a good fight against the national government proposals. It shouldn't be about politics or lip service. It should be real action, as Mr. Healy says. It's not about numbers, but building something the borough can be proud of for future generations. It shouldn't happen in a rush, and it shouldn't ignore facts. The evidence and the council's actions at the moment are pointing to another bad local plan that will bring blight to many. What is the old saying? It doesn't matter how much you force a square peg into the round hole, but it just won't fit. And we must not ignore the facts. Residents want to hear proposals they can support and something they'll be happy to live with. Spatial strategies do work as long as there's well thought out, solid, workable planning that goes with it. And our current blight.
3 minutes,
Okay, all I'm going to say is I think we need to ask members to stop, take a breath, listen to the parish councils, and the local communities, and do not ignore the facts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cox, I'm ever so sorry. You should have been next, but if you'd like to come in now.
That's not a problem at all. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much for all of the people who've signed this and will continue to sign it. I think we are seeing a national outcry, certainly from the MPs that we are engaging with, have engaged with and are aware of, who are challenging their own government on the figures that they are proposing that were in, I believe, manifestos back at the last election to bring 337,000 houses to the whole nation. Now, where they're going to go will be down to each individual area to assess, but the assessed figure, the formula, has been set by the government, who know they need to deliver 337,000 houses a year ad infinitum. So therefore, when we ask the local support the move to challenge the figure, as we have been doing, and it's more than one meeting has happened, Mr. Healy, only 10 of them came from the whole of Kent, but the whole of Kent is affected. Just looking at one county, there are 10 districts who are all going to have their assessed need figure raised. And by huge, our existing figure is 883. We're working on a plan that will bring us 1,214, but the new government figures want to bring in round figures 1,600. And I certainly did not vote for that. I didn't vote Conservative, but I certainly know people who are challenging me and who are challenging, possibly by signing your petition, they're challenging the figure that's given. But the government have been very firm and said, we will deliver. We are not going to change for Maidstone. We're not going to make a difference in Maidstone. We're not going to make a difference in Carlisle, Gwent or Aberystwyth. It is going to be the same across the country. But we have to try and find a way to make it work in Maidstone, in the places that we can take some development. And from the outset, as cross-party, we were looking for places to have a garden community. Now, when we talked about this, and then as a council, we put in our call for sites a special document that meant people could put forward their own garden communities as landowners or developers, we got various applications come forward, proposals, not applications. And it is those that we then considered. And we will listen, because I'm determined to get us to 18B. And I have made sure that we can see a strategic planning and infrastructure committee that has listened. We need to get to 18. The threat of the bigger figure is there. It will happen, But if we can get it done quickly and we can get to 19, all well and good. We will stave it off for perhaps 3 years. But if we don't, and we don't get the evidence by going to 18B from all of the people who've to sign this, and we can't say to them this isn't correct, we can't have this amount of housing, we will not be able to move forward. We need everybody on board to get us to the various stages so that we can represent the residents. We don't just want to put delivery of houses anywhere. We need to know that we can support it with the infrastructure. We can support it with not a motorway services, Councillor Powell, a motorway junction. I think you need to check your facts of what's going on. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor. Can anybody else hear me?
Yeah, you're right.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you, Martin.
Thank you, members. Just one moment.
Yeah, I can hear you, Martin.
Marianne's fallen asleep, I think. Don't blame her.
Right, go ahead, Councillor Harper.
Thank you. The housing numbers are clearly going to be decided elsewhere through a process of the discussion between Maidstone and the government and various other things, no doubt. I just wanted to mention a couple of things, really. The element referring to infrastructure is correct. We do need the infrastructure, and I think the fact that Kent County Council now seems to be working better with Maidstone does, I think, hopefully offers some hope that when we do agree the new local plan in whatever form it will be, that infrastructure will start to come before the housing gets built. We also need to remember that the local plan is more than just housing. It's also about hospitals, open spaces, libraries, parks, employment, and medical facilities and so on. So it's a holistic approach we need to be thinking of. And clearly housing is an element, but it is not everything. Councillor Sams referred to affordability, so I just endorse all she was saying on that. But just a couple of things. One thing is we all need to remember, and most of us represent the urban part of the borough from Maidstone town, where we don't have the benefit of parishes at the moment. Whilst it's, I fully support parishes contacting us and so on, we have to remember that most of us are representing residents who don't have parish councils, and especially with COVID, probably don't necessarily have such active residents groups at the moment, just because people cannot meet or anything. And so, potentially the urban voice tends not to go slightly unheard. And just really finally, this is a useful debate, but perhaps we should also be thinking about the government's changes they're considering to the whole planning law. That once the local plan is in place, that you don't actually need individual planning applications, because the local plan zones land for housing or industry or whatever.
Sorry, Councillor Harper, we are talking about the petition.
Yeah, we are, but I'm saying that the petition fails to pick up on some of that, which I think if the council was to take this forward to SPY, we would also those issues. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Can I now call on Councillor Faygooch, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Healy, for singling me out. I take that on the chin, and I make no apology at all for defending my own patch. And I'm sure there are many other councillors who are equally defending their own patch.
Hear, hear.
But at the end of the day, we know that sooner or later we're going to have to come down and make a decision. But however, if I can just pick up on the valuable words that Councillor English said, and that is that no decision has been made yet. I take your point that the garden communities may well be our Achilles heel, but they are currently being assessed. Now, if we took whether my patch out of the pool, or even if we took out Heathlands from the pool, if we just took it all out, can you imagine that the government would say to us, well, you haven't got a sound plan. Where's the evidence that Barming isn't suitable? Where is the evidence that Heathlands is not suitable? So we've got to go through what we've got to go through at the same time as trying to get the government to change its mind. So yeah, we need the evidence, but may I just say how I think that your arguments are put eloquently and professionally, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Could I now call upon Councillor Brian Clark, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to pick up on a point made by Councillor Gooch there. I think really we are in a situation where we're all defending our areas, or we're certainly looking at the evidence for sites that are coming forward. And with the numbers that we're talking about, if you think of almost like an inflated long balloon, if you squeeze one area, the next area sort of inflates. And unfortunately, the numbers that are coming down to us, it's almost popping that balloon as far as Maidstone's concerned. The fact that there is evidence that we are reviewing, as Councillor Gooch mentioned, is something that we have that Dartford Borough Council does not have with Ebbsfleet. Ebbsfleet is a development. While you say it's a good development, that the whole planning process was taken away from Dartford Council, and it's all part of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation, which was something that was set up by the government. So unfortunately, Dartford actually doesn't have the same level of scrutiny from members and evidence weighing up that is going on in Ebbsfleet. So I do want to make that distinction. We are at least looking at the evidence. We haven't made decisions at the moment, but we're certainly going through it. In terms of the numbers, we are looking at a current local plan of 883, and the government is looking to increase that overall in the local plan update to 1569, unless we meet certain targets, which you'll probably hear about later on in this review. Now, that's an 80% increase, and there's no area in Maidstone where that won't be felt when that ultimately comes through. Even if we get the delay, the short-term delay of the local plan update, we will feel that pain at some point. But with the local plan update, we are at least looking to engage with residents through Regulation 18B. There was a call to just skip straight to Regulation 19. If that had happened, we would literally be the council developing the local plan and handing it out to consultation. It would not come back to us to listen to residents and to listen to parishes and work out how we make adjustments for Regulation 19. We will literally just put it out as we see it, and it will go to the government inspector to wade through evidence that he may not necessarily be familiar with as potentially not a non-resident. The last point I would like to make is about infrastructure, and the point that Councillor English made was a good point about us not being the Highways Authority. But even when we collect developer contribution, as we have along the A274 Langley Park area, we've collected several £1 million there. KCC had met with the developer
10 seconds, Councillor Clark.
And said this is the harm. Now KCC, there are councillors at KCC that are trying to take away that and not do those improvements. So we're not even going to get to spend the money that we've collected.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I would now like to call upon Councillor Jonathan Pearl, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been quite consistent in my view that this council is probably not competent to deliver the supposed benefits of the Heathlands garden community without all the obvious adverse impacts. And I've always objected to the secrecy and subterfuge with how this council approaches these matters, and Heathlands, it seems, in particular. But I really must object to Mr. Healy stating, and I quote, that urban and suburban Maidstone need to take their fair share, unquote. That's not what his petition says. That's not what thousands of people have signed up to. It's not what I've signed up to. Moreover, it ignores the fact that urban and suburban Maidstone has taken the lion's share of all this development for years now. It's literally getting to the point where the ground is collapsing beneath us. In my ward, in my street, there are 650 units already penciled in. The northern site boundary will be literally 12 yards from my front door. And that's before we start talking about the windfalls, like the 70 units at the Summerfield site. I don't want to see the countryside needlessly churned up, and we certainly need to be pushing back on these government targets. But let's be clear, this town is literally choking, and it should not be used by this council or anyone else as an easy solution. We've done our bit in Maidstone Town. We've used most of the brown sites because we've borne the brunt for 20 years now. No more, please.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. I'd now like to call on Councillor Dan Daly, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. I've got every sympathy with Mr. Healy and all those who have signed this petition because they are still believing that what Greg Clark said at the beginning of his new National Planning Policy Framework in 2012 is true. And never was true, unfortunately, because what he did say in that was we're going to sweep away all the arcane planning rules, we're going to have a very simplified planning system, and we're going to listen to the local people. That was the promise. So, Mr. Healy, I have to say to you, I'm on board with you, and all our members here are pretty on board with you as well. But I represent Allington. Allington in the year 1900 had 103 houses. Today it's got 7,600 houses, and we've had another 4,000 houses planted on us roundabout. We've got no more space left to be built on. So I'm pretty sure that unless we go up 20 or 30 stories, I'm pretty safe from any further development. But I'm not sitting here being blasé about it. I think this is very sad and very difficult to understand. But people will sign a petition that seems to give them hope that just signing the petition is going to make a difference. Now, we've heard from all the people who are professional planners, people who understand the system, that there are no choices to be made here locally. Whichever way the government twirls on this, it's not right. And when we talk of infrastructure, we're talking about often not just the people who are coming in here, but the people who have to be serviced once they get here. And that means the doctor, we all know the doctor's surgeries, we all know something about medical centres, and we all know about teachers in schools. You can build schools, but if the teachers are not there to put in the schools to teach, then that's the other part of infrastructure which is going adrift. So I don't care which way we turn on this one, Mr. Healy. I want you to understand, and I want you please to understand, to tell your people who are queuing up to sign these forms, that we are not puppets. We are not being dictated to by just sitting back and listening to this. But the fact of the matter is that if we do not comply with these dictates from government, there will be an inspector who comes here and does it for us. And then there will be absolutely no need to talk to the parish council because they will be swept away. That's not to say that there won't be a unitary authority here within about 4 or 5 years, and you'll all be swept away anyway. But that's what's going on at the moment. So I'm sorry about
10 seconds,
this.
Councillor
I
Daly.
don't need any more than that, Madam Mayor. I'm thankful for the opportunity to say these words.
No, thank you very much. I would now like to call on Councillor David Burton, and from my list, I think most people have spoken. So I would just like to let you know that after Councillor David Burton, I'm asking for no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to start with sort of saying, let's look at this on the national political stage. As far as I'm aware, none of the national parties said anything other than build 300,000 houses. And I'll be generous. I'll include the Liberal Democrats in that description of national parties. But, you know, they all acknowledge the same level of house building. Now, what I would then go on to say is I think we're almost sidestepping what the petition is saying. We've all spoken about the terrors of a development in our patch, and some have alluded to the alternative. But let's actually look at the alternative. The alternative, which I think is what this petition asks us to consider, is this council saying, no, we won't do it. We don't think it's right for our patch, by which I mean the broader patch of the borough. No, we won't do it. We will refuse. And I have to say, speaking personally, I'm almost beginning to see that as where we're going to end up. And I weigh this in my mind on almost a daily basis. Chairman of the SPY committee, tasked with delivering the local plan for the council's approval, considering that alternative. That is the alternative, but you have to weigh the consequences. And the consequences are, it won't stop development. It will come. It will be developer-led, market-led, approved by a government inspector, piecemeal. Now, I think that's actually what the petition is asking us to consider, whether we stand up and rebel the process. But on a daily basis, I weigh in my mind the exacting price that will place on Maidstone as a whole. But that's the stark choice that we have. Respond to what our residents are saying, and it's universal. It's across the whole patch. Nobody wants the development where they live. That's what they're asking. We have the weighty matter on our shoulders to actually decide whether it would be appropriate to respond to that wish, but what a price will be paid. That's what the petition's asking us, and that's how I think it should be considered. I would really welcome another petition that actually asks residents that exact question. Do they want us to do that? Let the market take over, or try and keep some sort of control on the process locally? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I would now like to call upon Mr. Healy again. Mr. Healy, you now have the opportunity to respond to the issues raised in the debate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think I can come on video, but anyway, you can have me orderly.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you all for the debate. I think it's been very useful. I think there's more to go on this by a long way. I think we'd like to see this council debating these issues far more openly. At the moment, we've still not seen this spatial strategy for Maidstone.
Mr. Healy, are you there? Mr. Healy?
He's gone.
Appears not.
No, he wasn't on the list, and I did say that Councillor Burton would be the last. No. Yeah. Because we've lost Mr. Healy, we now go on to the next item, please. The petition and the views of the council will now be referred to the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee. So we can't do no more because Mr. Healy's gone. So we won't know no more now until it goes to the committee. So I'd now like to go on to item 10, please. I have received notification that Mr. Stuart Jeffrey wishes to ask a question of the chairman of the Policy and Resource Committee. Mr. Jeffries? Don't think that we're having much luck tonight.
Mr. Jeffrey, are you ready to ask your question?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely. It is now almost 18 months since the Council declared a climate and ecological emergency, and 15 months since the Council agreed to develop an action plan. The plan was due to be presented at April's Policy and Resources Committee, but was understandably deferred until June. There have been 3 Policy and Resource Committees since June and still no sign of a plan. Given that the climate and ecological emergencies dwarf the COVID pandemic, why is the Council not giving it its full attention?
Go ahead, Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey, for your question. As you correctly point out, there have been 3 P&R meetings since we had hoped to present our action plan for the Council's response to the climate change emergency. We remain focused on addressing the biodiversity and climate change with projects and action happening across the Council. For example, using electronic equipment in our parks and the Go Green, Go Wild project, to name but a few. The Council's cross-party working group on biodiversity and climate change has continued to meet. A report will be coming to the Policy and Resources Committee on the 21st of October, which will include a strategy and an action plan. This report also contains input from the Carbon Trust, which will provide evidence and recommendations. Sadly, this vital report has been delayed due to the pandemic. As I'm sure everybody is aware, at the last P&R meeting, the committee have endorsed and supported the need for a post to manage and seek funding to implement whatever the Council endorses and promotes, once we see the report and the actions that will follow.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Mr. Jeffries, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Chairman of the Policy and Resource Committee arising out of your original question or the reply?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Councillor Cox, what will you tell your grandchildren when they ask why you didn't do everything enough, quickly enough, and why you didn't do everything possible to stop the climate and ecological catastrophes?
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey. I think I will say to them that it is not just the responsibility of any council, any county council, any country, or indeed all of us. It is absolutely all of us that should look at this. Every resident, every neighbourhood, every business, every visitor that comes to Maidstone. There are simple steps that could be taken. Some small actions to make large changes. We need to commit to the changes that we can make in our everyday lives. We can make better choices, the way we travel, the way we choose a vehicle when we buy it. All of these things, just even heating our house. We should be sharing the learning that we gain from all the interactions we have and the facts that are brought towards us to reduce energy and to reduce emissions. So let's start in our own lives, your life, Mr. Jeffrey, your families, your homes, the businesses you interact with. We will, with the parishes, the district councils, the county councils, we will all try to influence government and countries to do the right thing. I'm just saying, consider the changes that we can do now. I agree with you, but this doesn't just happen overnight. And because of the pandemic that you've said overshadows this, we find ourselves with even less resource to continue on the path that we as a council chose to do, and that is to try our best to do this in the timescales given. So that's what I'll tell my grandchildren, Mr. Jeffrey. I tried our hardest, and sadly, a very large thing came in between us at the start of this. This is a marathon, but we need to act as swiftly as we can in the best way we can, Mr. Jeffrey. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Jeffries, for your question tonight. I've received notification that Ms Geraldine Brown wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Democracy and General Purpose Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Will the Democracy and General Purposes Committee work with group leaders to ensure that next year's election arrangements, particularly so-called PERDA, and as necessary, the Constitution, are revised to ensure that the local development scheme suffers minimal inconvenience and lost time arising from the election period?
Thank you very much, Geraldine. Good evening to you. Thank you for your question. The so-called PERDA is the period immediately before elections, as you know, when specific restrictions on communications activity are in place. And this is typically 6 weeks before the election date. The date of the election is set in legislation by way of the Electoral Commission. So it's not something that we at local authority level can do anything about. So consequently, the council's constitution doesn't contain any arrangement for the conduct of council services in the run up to an election, as it's already set out in the guidance. And specifically, the guidance is set out in section 2 of the Local Government Act 1986, amended in 1988. And it essentially says that councils should not publish any material which, in whole or in part, appears to be designed to affect public support for a political party. Now, I've described that in detail because actually, on that basis, our council services, our council business will continue, and particularly as group leaders, and in fact, all of my fellow councillors, we're very, very much aware of the potential additional risks facing us as we progress the local plan review as it is set out in the local development scheme. So while our constitution doesn't cover it at all, what I can assure you, I can reassure you actually, that our democratic services team and our spatial planning team are working hard to achieve the local development scheme timetable. It's later on in our papers, I know, but I'm speaking as I find at this moment. Now, for example, it may involve possibly changing the dates around. For example, the council's annual meeting in May, making sure that it ties in with the new strategic planning and infrastructure committee meeting in the new financial year. So we're really thinking ahead to try and make it happen, because we've got to enable, we cannot prevent any delay to the decision-making process. And I believe that was the point of your question. So I hope you find that helpful, Geraldine.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Ms Brown, would you like to come back with a supplementary question?
Yes, please. With officers trying to pull out all the stops to achieve early Regulation 19 consultation, do you not think that members, particularly group leaders, should try as hard as they can to find a solution and remove the possible impediment for the benefit of residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. I actually believe that we are doing that, but I have to say, if there is anything that we can improve on, then yes, we will, because we will all suffer. We are all part of this borough. We all want to try to get the best for our borough. And I do believe that we are all trying and we are all making the effort. So please let me reassure you again. And I have to say, if anybody doesn't agree with what I've said, please speak now or forever hold your peace. Thanks very much, Geraldine, for your questions.
Don't ask questions of councillors, Councillor Gooch.
I beg your pardon, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Geraldine, for your questions tonight. I received notification that Mr. Peter Cooling wishes to ask a question of the chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee. Mr. Cooley.
Thank you very much. In your view, do you think this council is assured that our borough will not have to absorb 5,000 extra dwellings in the period up to 2037 if a new algorithm comes into force. I'm hoping you heard that.
No, yeah, we did, Mr. Cullen, but I can't hear Councillor.
Yeah, apologies, Madam Mayor. I
sorry.
was waiting on your instruction.
Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Cooling, I really, really wish I could give you that assurance, but we have no control over if and when government may implement new guidance that would bring the new number before us. We do not have that control, and I wish we did. I can assure you that we are making strenuous representations to government through their consultation about the new methodology, and that we're working with our MPs to lobby to the heart of government on this matter. And as you're well aware, in a matter that comes before us later, we're doing our best to accelerate our process that we might get in before a new number is imposed. But sadly, I can't give you that fundamental assurance because we don't have that control.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Sorry, Mr. Cullen, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the chairman?
Yes, I would be grateful.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Does that mean when it gets to agenda item 15, you will really express your concerns that the proposed LDS later on leaves us very exposed as a borough in January, February, and probably a good bit of March if the algorithm changes, and that the LDS is just not quick enough, agile enough, and is not really covering our risk? Thank you.
At the moment, I am answering as the chairman, a spy, but you know, I think my personal views on that are well known for anybody that's listened to the debates that bring the matter before full council this evening. So I shan't answer you directly. Let's see what happens when we get to that item, please.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions tonight, Mr. Cullen. Right, I received notification that Mr. Peter Titchener wishes to ask a question of the chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Good evening.
What role and with what legal standing and weight will neighbourhood plans and also those nearing completion play in the current local plan review?
Thank you, Mr. Titchener. Adopted neighbourhood plans carry the full weight of the development plan for the purpose of decision making. So when it comes to local plan review, they are a material consideration alongside other key factors such as government guidance, key plans and strategies, Maidstone's own strategic plan and specialist studies. But to get to the heart of your question, I think when this was debated during the making of the current local plan, it is sadly acknowledged that a new local plan adopted will trump existing neighbourhood plans where they disagree. So they will have influence in the plan making, but they don't have permanent dominance.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Mr. Titchener, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the chairman?
Yes, I would, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Well, yes, thank you, Councillor Burton. What concerns me about neighbourhood plans is that there are parishes that have spent an awful lot of money in producing them, and there are a lot of parishes currently spending a lot of money in producing draft neighbourhood plans.
Is it a question, Mr. Titchener, please?
Sorry?
Can you turn that round into a question and not a statement, please?
Into the question.
Yeah.
If they're to be set aside, what does that say about the weight NBC gives to local opinion? Because I was hoping to hear that if you're going to give the same weighting to the current neighbourhood plans, that the green list will be amended to exclude any sites that conflict with those neighbourhood plans.
I completely sympathise with what you're conveying to us there, Mr. Titchener, and we have the same frustration ourselves with our own local plan. This council spent hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not million and whatever, in producing the current local plan in the belief that it would have 15 plus years of life. And lo and behold, the goalposts are moved before we could even get the goal in. And we had little more than 4 years expectancy out of it on the say-so of an inspector, which was then reinforced with the change to a 5-year cycle. We're all in the same boat, neighbourhood plans, local plans, against the context of a moving feast of the delivery requirement upon us. I wish I could give you more reassurance, but the national planning policy guidance is absolutely clear, and I've been researching this further in the context of neighbourhood plans. You know, what would happen if Maidstone didn't have a local plan at all? I thought, well, that might be good because there's no new local plan to trump neighbourhood plans, and actually they would become the main show in town. But actually, when you look into the regulations, paragraph 14 has that covered. And if we don't have a local plan in place, modified or otherwise, the neighbourhood plans, in the words of the regulation, is likely to be significantly and demonstratively outweighed by the benefits provided. So the assumption in favour takes over. I wish I could give you more reassurance, but it's a moving feast. It's quicksands under our feet.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teacher.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brown.
I have received notification that Mr. John Horn wishes to ask a question of Chair.
Sorry, I lost communication. Am I?
Yes, you're there, John, if you'd like to ask your question.
Madam, I'm most grateful. Councillor Burton, will you recommend to the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee that it requires officers to list, describe and give an estimated impact of every reasonable constraint that could be applied to the housing needs figure to derive a lower housing target for the local plan?
Thank you, Mr. Horn. My answer to you is I don't think I need to require that of officers because it's intrinsic in the process of the local plan review. Constraints will be examined as part of the sustainability assessment, and other assessments such as the flood risk assessment bring all of the constraint possibilities into play, are then brought together as a holistic consideration overall. Consideration of constraints is intrinsic in the process.
Thank you. Would you like to ask a supplementary question, Mr. Horn?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor, if I may. Given that I'm grateful for that reply, which I take to be a yes. And certainly my question is, as the government is stating that local circumstances should be applied to the algorithm's housing numbers, does that mean then that you will expect officers not to repeat the equivalent of what the previous leader said, that during development of the current local plan, the 23 constraints had been examined and none applied?
We're at a sufficiently early stage to not know the answer of the 23 constraints, and who knows, there may be 53 this time. Maybe there will be 13 active constraints for consideration. You know, that the process hasn't finished. I think what disappointed us all in the last time constraints were considered is that it became really quite subjective. Let's take traffic congestion as a great example. You know, we all on a daily basis suffer the woes of congestion at some point or other during the day travelling around the borough. And we would identify further congestion as a constraint upon the process. But when it was broken down into numbers, you know, if a journey that currently takes half an hour is going to become 40% longer, what's that? You know, so it's 36 minutes instead of 30 minutes. That wasn't possible to judge that objectively as a constraint. You know, it's a dreadful degradation of the traffic congestion that we suffer, and you actually have to get the constraints to an extreme scenario. You know, and I think in the highways context, the word severe was the one that was begun to become the test. But what they actually mean is gridlock. And gridlock is when nobody can move. And because nobody can move, not one person can get out of the way to let somebody else move. You know, that's the extreme at which that type of constraint comes into play if we're going to argue it in front of a government inspector. But, you know, to say that my journey time, my quality of life is eroded because it takes me 40% longer to make a journey that used to be only half an hour is very difficult. But rest assured, through the sustainability assessment and the other assessments that we'll conduct, each matter will be re-examined once again, and you know, they yet may reveal absolutely fatal constraints, which we will obviously use in our argument against numbers.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Thank you, Mr. Horn, for your question tonight. I received notification that Mr. John Hughes wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee. Go ahead, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Burton, as transport is such a major problem in the borough, can you give residents an assurance that the key outcomes of the review of the integrated transport strategy will be available to inform the local plan review preferred strategy consultation in December 2020 if this proposal is agreed by the Borough Council?
The integrated transport strategy, the revision of that is in relatively early stages. So as such, you know, the early directions from that do not give us definitive answers on where development can or cannot be tolerated. Sadly, that's the thing that comes at Regulation 19, when an actual firm proposal is on the table, and then that is tested thoroughly with transport modelling in a more exact way than the early indications. Well, that this site is theoretically possible, that site is theoretically possible, but it's not until you get a cumulative cohesive plan, which is Regulation 19, that final test is applied. And there's many of us that probably think that, you know, that's trying to slam the stable shut after the horse is bolted. But until we've got a firm proposal on the table, that the detail testing doesn't allow us to actually shape the mitigations that may be necessary, that then in turn form part of the integrated transport strategy. It's a completely iterative process, a bit like being on a hamster wheel.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hughes, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
As the integrated transport strategy is such a critical evidence base and strategic base for the local plan review, isn't it very difficult to come up with alternative strategies if you haven't got some clear indications, as you've just indicated, from that review of the integrated transport strategy?
It is very, very difficult. And, whilst there might not be clear we will have some very early, very high level guidance from some early runs of the traffic model. But it's not the ultimate decision making material. And I guess the merit of the 18B consultation is that there would be a preferred option, but reasonable alternatives, which allow the statutory consultees such as highways to actually make views against alternatives. That perhaps is the purpose of 18B, although that process is happening anyway in the officer dialogue between the two authorities. And yes, we'll be consulting on options. Perhaps when some of us think we should actually consult on a more definite direction and get definitive answers as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions tonight, Mr. Hughes. I now received notification that Mr. Gary Thomas wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could ask Councillor Paul Harper, on the assumption that the number of houses being built to be built is not increased by the new algorithm, what sort of figure are you proposing to include in the local plan review for employment needs within the borough, recognising that a good proportion of new dwellings is likely to be purchased by those working outside the borough?
Councillor Harper?
Thank you. Well, in response with national planning policy guidance, the evidence work produced for the employment and retail provision as part of the local plan sets out 3 different scenarios to forecast job growth in the borough over the plan period to 2037. And these 3 items are labour demand, past trends and labour supply. Maidstone's local plan uses labour demand forecast as its core matrix because this is considered to be the most realistic. And for consistency, we're continuing to use this measure in the revision we're now doing. But it will be sensitively tested against past data and labour supply, which takes into account your issue in terms of travel to work patterns and areas. The target figure for additional commercial floor space across the whole borough, emerging from the evidence base, stands at 105,555 square metres of employment space and 16,146 square metres of retail space. However, it's important to point out that there are technical predictions are probably less accurate than one might anticipate due to the unprecedented climate we now find ourselves in and the huge uncertainty in terms of the economic trends moving ahead. But in the first instance, we are looking to implement those types of measures. In addition, we are preparing a development planning document alongside our local plan review. This will focus on how we reinvent our town centre, the current pandemic, and the best possible position to capture investment in high value added sectors. I'd just like to reiterate that the Council's view and the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee's view is to provide enough jobs facilitate enough jobs for local people to sustain our county, town and rural areas, and to make sure that Maidstone doesn't become a dormitory suburb with people having to flow out for work. So currently, our new economic development strategy, which we're working on and will be going out to public consultation over the next few months, has 5 core aims. And later to reiterate that Maidstone Borough is open for business, that we want to provide a diverse and productive economic base for the borough. We want a thriving rural economy. We want opportunities for everybody, wherever they live and whatever their circumstances. And finally, we want a destination Maidstone town centre. So we recognise that we need to not only work to improve and provide better jobs and high quality jobs in Maidstone town, but throughout our rural areas. And those are some of the areas which have been neglected perhaps in the past in terms of policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Mr. Thomas, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of Councillor Harper?
Yes, if I could, please, Madam Mayor.
Please go ahead.
I fully appreciate the difficulties you've got in doing this, but have you done any actual surveys to see where the purchasers of houses in the numerous new developments have moved from, including from London, while retaining London-based jobs? We understand that the sort of large-scale housing that we've had, which is executive time housing, usually are purchased on mortgages, and you don't get a mortgage unless you are already employed. So that sort of background survey of where people come from and whether they've bought things on mortgages with existing jobs, I believe would be fundamental to looking to the future jobs need.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you. Yes, well, the council has undertaken at various times surveys in terms of surveying the working population, both in Maidstone and also where residents work. And the evidence shows us that whilst London is obviously a major source of employment for people in Maidstone, it is actually less than overall across the whole borough than you would tend to think. More people would tend to work in either Tunbridge and Malling and Medway and generally tend to work in London. Also, the surveys have shown in the past that the average earnings of people who live in the borough is actually higher than the people who work in the borough, which helps us identify the need for looking for new key quality jobs. But we've currently engaged, as part of the work to do the new economic development strategy, a company called Litchfields, who are also not only working for us, but are doing work for Kent County Council and others. And they are currently in the process of providing us with more facts and figures in terms of our local economy, which will be coming to Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee, I think it's either our November or our December committee meetings. And so you can rest assured that the work we do is based on factual evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Thank you for your question tonight, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
I have received notification that Miss Donna Greenham wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee. Go ahead.
Please can you tell me what Maidstone Borough Council's response will be to the Department for Transport's current consultation, pavement parking options for change?
Thank you very much for your question. I can tell you that the council, through their officers, have actually already submitted a response. Broadly, there were 3 things to consider. The first was improving the traffic regulation orders process, under which local authorities can already prohibit pavement parking. A second scenario was a legislative change to allow local authorities with civil parking enforcement powers to enforce against unnecessary obstruction of the pavement. And the third approach was a legislative change to produce a London-style pavement parking prohibition throughout England. Currently, our response supports option one, improving the traffic regulation orders. But we say that combined with option two, a legislative change to allow local authorities with civil parking enforcement powers to enforce against unnecessary obstruction of the pavement. The third option was not supported because the very nature of the roads in our borough, it would be completely impractical, and we would potentially end up with lots of individual exceptions, which would require masses of signage and individual TROs. So I think I've sort of summarised for you the response to that consultation from the council.
Thank you. Greenham, do you wish to ask a supplementary question, Councillor Burton?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
While the consultation is taking place, what steps are the council currently taking to highlight the dangers of pavement parking to vulnerable residents through local newsletters and social media usage?
Currently, there are no specific initiatives from the council that I'm aware of directly to address the matter in the way that you're suggesting.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions tonight, Ms. Greenham.
Thank you.
Right, councillors, we now go on to item 11. There are no questions from members of the council to the chairmen of committees. So I'd like to move forward to item 12, and I call upon the leader of the council to submit his report on current issues. Councillor Cox, you may speak for 5 minutes.
Can I just say that I'm not going to switch my video on because the sound quality was being affected. So if we could start my timing from when I do start. Okay. Some current items of news. COVID cases in Maidstone as at the 23rd of September. The active cases stands at 24, but the trend is fairly flat, and most of the current cases are associated with household clusters. In Hermitage Lane and Maidstone Hospital area, I'm sure you're all aware of the two southeastern water reservoirs that over the past weekend lost all of their reserves of water. All the detail I can give at this point is that the South East Water have been given every assistance that we can offer, from our communications department to information from our planning department as requested. The public have been kept informed, and indeed local members have been briefed. The tactical group has now been stood down, and we are in the recovery phase of the incident. Since July's council meeting, we've started the process of adjusting how we achieve our strategic plan in the context of change and uncertainty for the community and our financial resources. All councillors have had the opportunity to give their view on the current priorities. Our financial resources have been adversely impacted by COVID-19 pandemic, both in the terms of additional demands and reduction in income, and uncertainties remain for this year and future years. We see that the government have delayed the outcomes of the comprehensive spending review, and the November budget has even been delayed. This means that uncertainty will be prolonged, and there are some difficult decisions that we have to achieve to aim to set a balanced budget for next year and the years afterwards, and manage the resources so that we can weather the potential storms ahead. We're continuing to support the advice given from government to give people the most that are most impacted by the pandemic any support that we can. The most recent additions have been to establish a system for the test and trace self-isolation £500 payments. There is also a modest funding for emergency assistance with hardship payments from the government, which will award households for food and other basic needs. This will complement KCC's Kent support and assistance services for discretionary housing payments. I firmly believe in being as positive as I can. For example, around the Innovation Centre. Construction continues in earnest, demonstrating that we can deliver complex partnership projects to achieve the ambitions in our strategic plan for more jobs across the skills range for the benefit of our community. The Maidstone Innovation Centre is on track to open in the summer of 21, and it'll provide space for SMEs and jobs, both during the current £10 million construction phase, where we've ensured collaboration between the contractor and Mid Kent College so that their students are involved now and even when the facility opens. There's also been good progress in our 2 housing schemes. The private sale properties at Brunswick Street has now been offered to market. 7 of the 9 properties are under offer, and we will launch the Union Street section on around the 10th of October. These spectacles are not always rose-coloured though, and we do have challenges ahead. The local plan review, the additional complexity of the government's consultation on the changes to the standardised methodology for calculation and distribution of housing requirement in England are giving us pressure. Brexit and the preparations to manage the new trade agreements and the transition phases comes to an end. Of particular impact to MBC operations, given that Operations Stack and Brock may be implemented, have impact for our residents, businesses and even our own operations, including special attention to the waste collection. The coincidence of these with the period of continuing uncertainty and the challenge with COVID-19 and the winter severe weather possible episodes that may come will give us much more difficulties that we might face. The climate, housing and homelessness and the impact of austerity and the commitment to equality, we must try to do this with a different way of doing politics. We need to deliver a change for our residents. We have over the past 2 years seen the Council's strategic plan reflect these values, and through the joint working of the Borough, we will soon have a climate emergency group with an ambitious programme to effect the positive changes for the future. We're planning several iterations of what we can in November. We will plan for a service to take place in 2 locations, and nearer the time we will publicise where it actually will happen, subject to the COVID restrictions that might take place at the time. I was honoured at the weekend and privileged to be down at headquarters Mayor for the commemoration of remembrance at their air show with some 4,000 socially distant members of the public last weekend. It just goes to show that the events can be run if you have the space and the expertise to put them on.
Can you wind up now, please, Councillor Cox?
Thank you. That's the end. Were you looking at my script, Madam Mayor?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I now call upon the other group leaders one by one. You each have 5 minutes each, and remember your questions are to be what the leader of the council has spoken about. Thank you. I call upon Councillor Perry, the leader of the Conservative Party. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cox, for your report. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Are you okay? You can hear me. All right, I'll leave my video off, actually, because it might be better, might it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, first of all, I'm pleased. I think Maidstone has handled the COVID cases very well, and I think there, by the grace of God, we all go. But we seem to have kept it at a reasonably low level in our area, and that is something to be commended. And I think it does reflect also on the population who are understanding the issues and the social distancing and that is required. I agree with Councillor Cox about the strategic plan priorities. I think that is very important. I know we discussed this, and this I think, if I'm right in saying, is now going to the next stage where the various options, and I think all groups put forward options, will be reviewed and taken forward. So I think that's extremely important. One of the things that comes out of all this, I think, and the one thing that does concern me, and I think Councillor Cox alluded to it, was that we are living in this period of uncertainty, and there are a whole raft of area issues that we are going to have to confront. The local plan review, which I'm sure we'll be discussing even more later on, so I won't dwell on it too much. Brexit as well, clearly there are going to be major issues for the county, and that has an ongoing effect on us, and that's a high risk. And again, the spending review being delayed, and we sooner or later are going to have to consider what our position is for the next year's finances. And again, we're in a very high risk situation. So I am pleased that we are getting regular reports on risk. So I think this is one of the biggest things we're going to have to manage as we continue in this period of uncertainty. Because I think until we get a vaccination, we're all going to be living slightly differently. I mean, I would have liked to have gone to the Headcorn Airdrome Battle of Britain, but as someone who's got a long-standing medical condition, I just still couldn't risk going, and that I was rather saddened about. But I hear from the various people involved, and obviously you said it, Councillor Cox, that it was extremely successful, and I think that's really good. It's very good to hear about the Innovation Centre, because I think we all know this, that the economy has taken a huge hit. We're still, again, in a high-risk area, and we're going to have to look for jobs. I think the future, and we're going to have to look for new skills as well. And so this is a very important investment in the borough. I think they're the main points I really wanted to highlight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I now call upon Councillor Mrs. Gooch, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased to hear that both the leader and the leader of the Conservative group have brought forward some very key points here. We've got a lot of high risk stuff going on, but our reaction to it, the borough's reaction to it, is sound. Whether it is the management of the COVID-19, fortunately, dare I say it, we're levelling, we're okay at the moment. But if things went wrong, which I hope they don't, but we are tied in to a very big network with both Kent and Medway. There's a COVID-19 local outbreak control plan that's in place. And in the same way, take it to a smaller level, the reservoir that burst its banks almost locally to me at the weekend. Again, we've got a close-knit emergency team. We're all linking up with each other, whether it's the fire, the police, public health, you name it, those networks are there. And the same applies with Brexit. And in fact, our own emergency plans internal to the Maidstone Borough that we've had in the past, we're constantly renewing, and I think we are well prepared. So watch this space, and I have great faith in our officers and in our members to help us through the difficult months ahead. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. I now like to call on Councillor Mackay, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Cox. It was the first I heard about Southern Water losing some water. I think I found it today. It come down in my garden, I think.
I better switch off.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to switch off too.
Council cases for COVID in Maidstone. It's good to hear that we are not, and fingers crossed, let it remain that we are not one of those with rising numbers. So, excellent. Councillor Cox referred to the impact of austerity. I presume he was referring to the last 10 years. What I hope is we do not use the COVID emergency as an excuse to go back to another 10 years. I want to see us being positive and coming out of this fighting, building a better Maidstone. And also climate change. I think we still need to be very positive and invest in green products to reduce our carbon footprint. It will be very easy to say, well, let's not spend money on that. The return on it isn't very good. No, let's be positive. We've got to do this. And I'm going to keep it short and sweet, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mackay. So I would now like to call on Councillor Powell, the leader of the Independent Maidstone Group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as Councillor Mackay said, he would like to keep it very short. I'd like to keep it even shorter. Yeah, as far as the COVID is concerned, obviously one of the things that we can't do, I remember when it came around last time, it started in London and the southeast and it gradually went north, didn't it? This time it's in the north. And obviously I'm concerned that it might come, drop down the country somewhat kind of and hit us again. But at the moment, I think with something like, was it 12.2 out of every 100,000? I think that was today's news rather than sort of a week ago. So we still can't get complacent. But I mean, after what Councillor Cox said earlier on, I think that the council are doing an amazing job in most areas. But I've got to say it again, my only reservation is the way that we're handling the local plan. But I also realise that there's a lot of talks to go ahead in the future. So I will be playing an active part within those talks. But that's it. Thank you ever so much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. I will now open these items to questions from council members for a period of 15 minutes. Questions must relate to the issue raised by the leader and the other group leaders in their speeches. They will be answered as directed by the questioner and will not require a response from all group leaders. So, who's first on my list? Sorry. I haven't got anybody wanting to speak to any leaders.
Huzzah!
So, you must have done very well tonight, everybody. So, thank you. So, if there's no questions, we will go on items 13 to 15. I will read out the agenda item and then call upon the member who will be moving the recommendation. I will ask for a seconder, with members going through instant messaging or indicating verbally, and the first one to signal will be the seconder. The seconder will be asked if they wish to speak or reserve their rights. I will then advise members of the list I have received by instant messenger or those members wishing to speak, and then ask if there are any other members who wish to speak. These might be members who have dialed in. It is intended that voting be conducted first, establishing the need for the vote. If there is no dissent, then a vote is not needed. If one councillor dissents, and we will go through the named but not recorded voting process we have been using at committee meetings, unless 5 members of the council request a recorded vote by instant messaging or verbally in the debate. If a vote is required, I will ask the facilitator to go through the list of members in alphabetical order and ask them for their vote, which would be for, against, or abstain. If there is no response, it will be assumed that the member is not present. I will have a second or casting vote regardless of whether I have used my first vote. The Democratic Service Officer will be asked to confirm the result of the vote, and I will announce the decision. I call upon Councillor Mortimer to move the recommendation of the Communities Housing Environment Committee relating to the Cut Bush and Coral Charity recommendation on page 11.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. I move that the request for the Cut Bush and Coral Charity incorporating the Quested Arms House charity to reduce the number of council-appointed nominative trustees from 4 to 2 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Powell. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Is the recommendation agreed? Without the need of a name vote?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 14. I call upon Councillor Harvey to move the recommendation of the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee relating to the committee's annual report to Council, recommendation on page 13.
Thank you. I move the recommendations on page 13 as they are in the papers.
Is that seconded?
Seconded. Councillor Atkinson.
Councillor Atkinson, thank you very much. Is the recommendation agreed, councillors?
Agreed.
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 Thank
Agreed.
you.
Agreed.
Item 15. I call upon Councillor David Byrne to move the recommendation of the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee relating to the Local Development Scheme 2020 to 2022 and the Maidstone Statement of Community Involvement. I call upon Miss Geraldine Brown and then Councillor Cooling of Teeston Parish to address the meeting. You have a maximum of 3 minutes each. Mrs. Brown.
Madam Chairman, thank you. As you know, I'm chairman of the Kent Association of Local Councils Maidstone area, which represents all 41 parishes in the borough. This agenda item is crucial for all the current residents of our borough. You will know that the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government has published and is consulting on a proposed revision to the algorithm to calculate the housing needs within a local plan. For our borough, that could mean some 5,325 additional units during the local plan review period, over and above the 10,500 or so that we are already being planned. The green sites, that is those sites still in consideration for development, would we understand deliver some 11,500 units. That is, the current list may satisfy the current requirements. However, should the revised algorithm and its requirement for over 5,000 extra units be applied to our borough, that green list would be completely inadequate. A few late sites have come forward that may perhaps prove acceptable, but the immediate impact would be to increase pressure for one or more garden communities. A further call for sites might be entertained, but that adds to timescales and certainly means that the extra 5,000 units would be required. The proposed new algorithm comes with transitional arrangements which, if met, would allow for the retention of the housing numbers currently being planned for. Those arrangements are that when the algorithm goes to a local plan, it goes live. A local plan is already at Regulation 19 or will be within 3 months. The local development scheme put forward to you this evening was only agreed by the SPI committee within the context of strongly opposing views and contentious voting. We suspect, having subsequently dwelt on the matter, some SPI members may be having second thoughts. Therefore, it falls to this council to take full and visible leadership on behalf of our residents. This evening, you can either support the local development scheme put forward to you and keep your fingers crossed that the new algorithm is not carried through or that it is established in March or afterwards, or you can do something positive to ensure that the risk does not materialise. Removing that risk requires further acceleration to Regulation 19. Officers have already found scope to reduce the timescale by 6 months, back from December to June next year, while taking into account certain risks to achieving a sound new plan. There must be the possibility that with a suitable directive from this council and admitting there may be additional risks, a further acceleration of timetable could be envisaged that would remove the risk. Your decision is crucial for residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooling.
Good evening. I am a member of the coordinating team, including Maidstone Calc, Maidstone CPRE, the Bearsted and Thurnham Society, and the Joint Parishes Group. During preparation of the existing adopted local plan and were active throughout its examination. With that experience, we now wish to be constructive during the preparation of this local plan review towards achieving a sound and sensible outcome. You have heard that this agenda item is crucial for our borough. An accelerated local development scheme is about to be tabled for you to consider. Officers have chopped 6 months off the current scheme, which evidently had considerable slack in it. The threatened new algorithm to calculate housing numbers could require another 5,000 houses on top of the 10,500 or so on which preparation of this local plan review is proceeding. The green sites, even if all pass further scrutiny, would fall well short of meeting that 5,000 extra requirement if that threat materialises, and one or more garden communities that could then become inevitable. June timing for Regulation 19 and the proposed local development scheme leaves us completely exposed to the proposed algorithm coming into effect before sometime in March. That would render current plan preparations invalid, as they will then be based on completely inadequate housing numbers. However, it has been noted that the proposed new algorithm comes with a get-out. That is, when the algorithm goes live, if a local plan is already at Reg 19 or will be submitted to it within 3 months, the new housing number would not apply. That is, for us, the 5,000 would not apply if our local plan review is sufficiently advanced. We ask you not to approve the proposed new local development scheme put forward to you this evening, but to do something positive to ensure the 5,000 risk does not materialise. That requires further truncation of Regulation 19 timing by 2 to 3 months. Officers have already found 6 months. There are risks attaching to all claim-making scenarios, but one thing is certain. If the can-do approach is not adopted, achievement of a good outcome for our borough is threatened. At the moment, the proposed local development scheme leaves us clearly exposed to imposition of any new algorithm and is currently defined a requirement for an extra 5,000 houses on top of the planned 10,500. Please, members, require a further acceleration of timetable that would remove that risk, together with actions and decisions to mitigate any extra attendant risks. Your decision is crucial for residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cullen. I now call upon Councillor Burton to move the recommendation of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think our previous two speakers, Mrs. Brown and Mr. Cooling, have done an excellent job of introducing the item to us. I am required by the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee to bring their recommendation to you, which was arrived at after strenuous debate and was not a unanimous decision. So upon their instructions, that majority, I bring this motion to you, but I would like to know it does not necessarily reflect my personal thinking. Cutting to the chase, the SPI committee have asked me to bring to you a recommendation to approve the local development scheme 2020 to 2022, that being the September 2020 edition. 2, that the Maidstone Statement of Community Involvement September 2020 be approved. 3, the Statement of Community Involvement COVID-19 Temporary Addendum May 2020, adopted by Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee on the 9th of June 2020 as an addendum to the Maidstone Statement of Community Involvement September 2020. And 4th, that the Head of Planning and Development be granted delegated powers to reverse the changes within the Maidstone Statement of Community Involvement COVID-19 Temporary Addendum May 2020, adopted by the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee on the 9th of June 2020, as soon as COVID-19 restrictions allow. That's brought to you on behalf of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee.
Seconded. by Councillor Susan Grigg.
Thank you. I now have a list of councillors that wish to speak. So I call upon Councillor Patrick Garden, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Central government is in a very, very difficult time these days. They must push for urgent solutions for the problems of the whole nation. Councillor Burton made a valid point earlier this evening that all major national parties directly or indirectly subscribe to the need of 300,000 houses annually, nationally. The problem is that one-size-fits-all solution rarely brings fairness. While this nation needs clearly more housing, and house building will provide a much-needed boost to the economy, we cannot accommodate all the demand in the southeast, let alone in Maidstone. This puts local southeastern Maidstone politicians of all parties at loggerheads with our masters in Westminster. We all know that local authorities are bound by central government formula to provide housing numbers. You may have heard that the government wants to revamp the planning system, which is in principle not necessarily a bad idea. What causes local planners and politicians of all colours a massive headache is that the change of the government of the housing numbers formula. Even worse, the change of the formula may be brought in by government guidance long before the new planning legislation passes Parliament. In order to build 300,000 homes annually, Boris cannot wait until the wheel of planning law has been reinvented. Maidstone's local plan under current formula requires 883 houses per annum. Under the required current plan review, we would have to increase the target by 40% to 1,214 homes per annum. However, if the proposed new government formula kicks in before we reach final public consultation point regulation 19, this figure could potentially be 1,569 new houses per year, an increase of almost 80%. So how could we speed up the plan review? The Strategic Infrastructure Committee had 2 sessions in September, and as a member of that committee, I said that we live in strange times indeed. For instance, government had to suspend Parliament last year in order to achieve the democratic will of the people to achieve Brexit. Now, do we have to dispose with a public consultation in order to achieve the will of the people? We know what the people want. The people of Maidstone want less housing. And so therefore, I think that the decision taken at SBI was a fatal mistake in the eyes of this councillor. I move to take a full vote tonight that by the whole council to be given a chance to vote on this essential issue and that we go directly to regulation 19 without bothering with 18. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is that a proposed amendment?
Yes, it is. If I could have a seconder for that.
Okay, I will pass you over to the facilitator.
No, Councillor Perry is indicated.
You second it.
Is indicated.
Yep.
Yes, I'll second
Do you
it.
wish to speak, Councillor Perry?
I'll reserve my right if that's okay.
Okay. Now to debate the amendment.
Madam Mayor, I believe I was next.
You are, Councillor English.
I think we have a situation where there are no good choices, really. I think we all accept that. The problem is, if we and the public were all in broad agreement as to what places development should go in, I think we would have little difficulty proceeding immediately to Regulation 19. The difficulty we have is that's not the position. As we've heard this evening, there are many people, residents groups, organisations, councillors even, who wish to defend their own patch. So that means that whether we have a regulation 18B or regulation 19, it will be seriously contested. That means that in practice, we need the evidence to be pretty clear and conclusive. If we go to regulation 19 without much evidence, and tonight we've been told that the council needs to consult more and to slow down and to take on board the public. If we go to regulation 19 without that evidence, we will be facing a bitterly contested local planning inquiry without much evidential weight. Now, we may be in a position where the inspector will side with us and we get to a situation where we avoid the additional housing. The worst risk of all is that we get chucked back, like many other authorities have, for various situations where we haven't had enough evidence, whether that's this situation or lack of evidence of duty to cooperate. And we get sent back right the way to the beginning of the process and have to do another call for sites for the whole thing, not just the additional numbers, but the whole thing. We know perfectly that could leave us without a local plan and with planning by appeal without a 5-year housing land supply. We wouldn't be looking at an additional 5,000 houses. We could be looking at 4 or 5 years of unrestrained development everywhere. We've had that for 1.5 years, and that was bad enough. So I'm not saying that I don't understand the rationale for going to 19. I'm just saying it's a very high-risk strategy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we could be in a very serious situation. It's all very well talking about dashing leadership, but sometimes dashing leadership, as the lack of survivors from the Battle of the Little Bighorn will show on the American side, is not the thing that is indicated. So I would have to say that on balance, I think we would have a very high threshold to get through if we went straight to regulation 19. It's very high risk.
Sorry, Councillor Perry, I have you back on my list. Do you wish to come back?
No, I said I'll reserve my right, so I'll give somebody else a chance.
Okay, thank you very much. I have Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes, my IM wasn't working and now it does appear, so I'm happy to let other people go before me because I've only just appeared on the IM. It wasn't working, but I'm up to you.
Right. I've got Councillor Wilby.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to point out one thing. Obviously, we heard the two people speak before the chairman introduced this. Now, in my other role, I'm chairman of Tobble Parish Council. So when I hear people speaking on my behalf for my parish, when I've not been consulted, I do get a little bit upset. So I know that the Tobble Parish Council would like to have their say on this local plan, and we have discussed this in length at SPI twice now. And one of the key things is we need the evidence. Yeah, it's already been stated, but we do need that evidence, and without it, we will fail. And that's what our officers have advised us of this time and time again, and we will fail. If we go straight to regulation 19, any comments that come back, we cannot change the plan. So we need to do this part of it. I'd rather not do it, but it's part of the regulations, and we need to do it to actually get a sound plan over the line. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilby. Right, I don't know if my list is up to date. I'm so sorry. Councillor David Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be the first to admit that this is a very finely balanced decision. You have risk on one side and risk on the other. Councillor English, I think, said there's a risk of getting sent back to the beginning of the process if we move rapidly to 19. That risk is also existent if the new methodology comes into play very quickly, because we would be to consult afresh on a totally different target. So in that way, the risk is identical. I have deep reservations about the truncated public consultation that the local development scheme before us suggests, something of 3 weeks duration instead of the normal 6. The ramifications of that is that also before us is agreeing to unilaterally, without consulting the public, change how we propose to consult. I've got severe reservations that a truncated 3-week consultation won't be challengeable in its own right anyway. I have doubts that statutory consultees will be able to actually respond during that time frame, and that the shortened consultation will be challenged by those that don't like the final outcome, be they the developer community or others. So on balance, and it is a fine decision, I do believe that we should go straight to Regulation 19, which is in itself a consultation process. And I do believe that the evidence that you've heard referred to will be gathered anyway. The input from highways, the input from the water utility companies, the input from the power network companies, that evidence will be in place. What we won't have is the public response to a number of ideas of things that we might do or we might not do. And I do truly believe that what the public want is to know what the preferred option is, which we would present at Regulation 19, and that they will tell us exactly what they think about that. Don't keep asking us about what you might do. Tell us what you intend to do, is the message that I get from the public, from individuals, from campaign groups, and even parish councils. Put something definite on the table. You heard me speak earlier about Regulation 19. You actually have a comprehensive traffic modelling scenario and mitigations to consider. Whereas at 18B, it's ifs, maybes, and supposedlies. It's a fine decision. There's risk on one side, there's risk on the other, but I do believe that our public are actually asking us to stand up and put challenge to the new numbers, and this is a way of doing it within the rules. I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. I call upon Councillor Cox, please.
I believe Councillor Grigg was before me, Madam Mayor, then myself, yes. Oh, sorry, no, yeah, I will. No,
sorry,
no.
I can only go by my list.
Yeah, no, I can see what your list is. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think what is once again before us as a group of councillors is to look at the facts, and the facts do lay before us, and they are that we are in the process of a local plan review. We have mapped out where we wanted to be, and it is only because we have this threat of a new proposed figure, a new way of working out how many houses we need. I think the market will play this out realistically, but what I do not want to do is to go to a Regulation 19 whenever it's going to be without the evidence that we need so that our officers can present this to the inspector. Because if we do not have the evidence, the inspector will just simply say, I'm sorry, you're not even fit to come to 19 because we need to have everybody's input so that I can make a balanced view. That I is the inspector. And without that, we have evidence of other people failing and being sent back. Yes, we could go to 19 immediately. We could go without the evidence, and we could get there and they say, I'm sorry, you've got to go back. And when you go back, it will definitely be with the 1,600 homes per year, not the 1,214 that we might be able to get you through with. But what I tell you they will do, because they've done it before, is they will move the goalposts. And they will say, you're not going with 1214 for the next 5 years. We're only going to give you 30 months with the 1214. And we'll then have to go back in that 30 months and go back to a new call for sites to get our new figure of 1600. Yes, I heard from the chairman of Calc, who said we have got 11,000 units that we can choose from in the green list. That's absolutely true. And we had to do this process because the difference between 883 and 1214 was too big. The government wanted us to go back to the beginning and start again. It wasn't a small touch that we were able to make. And I felt confident that we would be able to, up until August the 6th, I believe it was, I felt confident that we would be able to go to Regulation 18B, then Regulation 19 in the timetable we were presented with. But I'm afraid we're not, because this government once again has moved the goalpost, has increased the number because they have a very large figure and we've all got to have it thrust upon us. This is not our choice, but I tell you, if we go to 19 without the evidence, we will end up with a big figure anyway. That will come 30 months after this. We went at a rush to 19, we'd get it back again. So let's do this properly. We know we should go to 18B because that's the timetable we're on now. If we're going to make it quicker and we're going to reduce the time that our people are going to be able to consult on, I believe they will understand that it is important for them to make their consultation as speedily and as promptly as they can, because they know what's at risk and they will do it. And we will start to engage with the parishes as soon as the report is there. That will probably be 3 weeks before it goes to consultation. So we will get 6 weeks. I'm speaking passionately and with nothing in front of me. Do not make the error. Vote for moving as on the papers. Do not vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Oh, no, I've got it. I call on Councillor Grigg, please.
Thank you. Again, I find it very frustrating that we are once again debating, as we've spent hours and hours already coming up with all of the different arguments. It's hard to find different words to say the same things over and over again, so I'm not going to try. What we actually decided last week was that to go straight forward to Regulation 19 would be foolhardy. We have to, nobody here wants to see a larger number of housing. But the bottom line is we have to go through a robust evidence base, solid and responsibly, and going straight to Regulation 19 does not achieve that. And you've heard the risk from Councillor English and Councillor Wilby, the high risk chance of failure if we do that. It would be such a foolhardy move. And yes, I have heard people ask me saying, tell us what to do. That has been community engagement. I've heard that again tonight from Councillor Faye Gooch. Community engagement. If you go straight to Regulation 19, that is out of the window. It can't happen. There will be statutory consultees spoken to in that 3 week, and I think to go to Regulation 19 would be the biggest mistake that we could possibly make. So please think very carefully about what decision you make this evening.
Thank you. Can I go on to Councillor Clark, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, with regard to this decision, we have debated it twice now. We've had two democratic decisions that have been made, and on both occasions it was consistent, and that's the recommendation on the paper tonight. When we had those lengthy debates, we had many officers present that gave us guidance and gave us information that would help us to make a decision while not making the decision for us, of course. Now, as part of that, we learnt that Tunbridge Wells tried to go to Regulation 19 and bypass Regulation 18, and they failed, and are now having to completely rewind. If this was to happen to us, we will be we will not have an adequate housing supply, and we'll go back to planning by appeal. And you look at those lists, the list of greens and the list of red, you will find that the people, the developers, the owners that have the red list will start making planning applications, because that's what happens when we don't have a 5-year housing supply. And while we may say, oh, we've got far more, looking at the greens, we've got loads more than we actually need to make our targets, that goes out the window, because even if you don't need them, when we don't have a 5-year housing supply, take a look at some of the appeal decisions. Government inspectors will say, I understand there is this harm, I understand the highways, I understand the impact onto a heritage asset, but the weight that I have to give is to the benefit of housing in an authority that does not have a 5-year housing supply. And if we don't go out with Regulation 18, we're talking sort of quite freely about Regulation 18, Regulation 19, and I'm not sure all members would understand that by getting rid of 18, that means that the consultation that we have with the public, we send out a list that back with feedback to say what they think is good and what is not good, and we as a council get a chance to review that, and we can make an amendment and go out on Regulation 19. If we just go to 19, we are just making a decision as a council without the public. We're ramming out a plan with what we think is where the housing should be, and then yes, it goes to consultation, but that feedback goes to the government inspector, and it's up to the government inspector to decide how to move forward with the plan. We will disenfranchise our residents if we miss Regulation 18, even if it's truncated. It's not 3 weeks, it's a minimum of 3 weeks. You've heard this evening, and officers have confirmed it, that they will be looking to get the maximum amount of consultation during that time. And if we do it under Regulation 18, it will come back to us, and we will be able to talk on behalf of residents and develop a Regulation 19 at that point. I urge members to vote for the papers, because this amendment is folly.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can tell, to Councillor Clark's point, I can tell you the developers have already got the bulldozers out in Staplehurst. They're already preparing land that we believe will be submitted, and it has already been submitted as part of the call for sites. So they certainly are showing us that they believe that there will be an issue in getting those sites ready. I think I would just like to voice my frustration that the call for sites ended on the May 24th, 2019. And, you know, we're only just seeing that first sites come forward now, 18 months later. And it's a shame now we're talking about weeks, not even months, when we've already had a lot of the information for 18 months.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Mumford, please.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
Just.
Right, I've been dealing with this all the way through the SPI. I've got advice from every quarter I can. And what members need to realise is both going to 18B and 19, we are trying to get there before we take on a higher target. Both of them try to achieve that. Both of them could fail. But remember, when we're saying to go to 18B, this is bridged and we're going faster to achieve the aim. Someone got their microphone up. Right. Every piece of advice I have got would be the chances that either could be found unsound by the inspector is quite high. But it's extremely high if we go to straight 19, and then we end up with planning by appeal. I heard people talking on behalf of 2 parish councils that I represent tonight saying they don't want to be engaged. Well, I tell you, they do want engagement. Going to 19, you are giving the residents and the parish councils a fait accompli, what we decided. You're not allowing that consultation to take place. So both methods are racing to beat this increased target. Neither want to be found unsound, but 19 stands a good chance of being unsound if we have not consulted with the parishes who want to be consulted with. Do not vote for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mumford. Councillor Powell. Councillor Powell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to come at this from a slightly different perspective. I won't be voting for the amendment, by the way, and I believe that we should stick to going to the regulation 18B, but not just to look at the evidence, but in some cases to look at the lack of evidence. So we've got to explore it from both points of view, not just because this might happen if we go straight to 19 or that won't. This is all about evidence, and evidence comes from both sides putting forward their cases. Whether it's 3 weeks or 6 weeks, preferably, I'd prefer 6 weeks, but that's a different issue by the sounds of it altogether tonight. But I think we've got to go to 18 before we go to 19 to cover ourselves. Let the people have their views, the 4,500 plus many others, and just take it from there. So I shan't be voting for the amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. I have Councillor Jonathan Pearl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've listened to this and I've heard sort of very impassioned calls and very reasoned calls on either side as to what the which way to go, with 18B or Reg 19. It's all jolly interesting stuff. And I sit there, I was thinking to myself, well, which one should I go with? And then I thought to myself, well, hang on. People have looked at this sort of in more depth than I have, or have already made a decision. We have this awful committee system in this council. We all have to sit there and sort of jam up on our particular subjects and on the committees we sit on. It so happens that the SPY committee have made a particular decision. They did it in spite of certain shenanigans in terms of, no, I won't say it out loud. But they made that decision. Part of me thinks I could decide my vote on the toss of a coin, but I think the more reliable one is just to work with the view that the specialist committee that looks at this has made a decision. So what's the basis of overturning it?
Right, I do believe, can I just check for a moment, councillors, that was the last person to ask to do a question? Yeah.
Madam Mayor, it's Anne Brindle here. Can I ask if Julie's seen the message I sent about Councillor Hinder?
I don't know, because I'm not with Julie. I'm here trying to run a meeting.
I don't know who's in charge of the IM then.
So can I ask you to, just to double check, please, because I'm trying to run a meeting here. Thank you, Anne.
But who's monitoring the IM then?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Right. It is a valid point, though, Madam Mayor, because at the moment we have various people dropping out.
Madam Mayor, Julie and Ryan have indicated they're working on it.
Yes. So as mayor, all I can do is go to the meeting. I can't do anything else. So could we have a little bit of order here, please? You've sent your messages. Ryan and Julie will be looking into it. So can we come back to the meeting now, please? So where are we now? There's no...
I think we're on the vote on the amendment, actually, Madam Mayor.
Well, I was going to, but the Chief Executive would like to speak to you councillors. So, Alison, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did ask to ask a question of clarification to Councillor Garton and Councillor Perry at the end of the contributions
on the amendment. And the reason is this, that you'll see on your screens, for those of you who have access to that the original recommendation makes reference to the local development scheme and the statement of community involvement. And the relevance of referring to that is that in these documents we set out timescales. And I didn't catch from Councillor Garton, and I know Councillor Perry has reserved his right to speak, what timetable was being talked about, simply that there was a proposal to move to Regulation 19 consultation. And so I'm asking the question because if the amendment is carried, we need instructions about the timetable that you're expecting. So if I could just ask for that clarification to be made, maybe Councillor Perry, you can do it in your contribution, or Councillor Garton could do it in his summing up. Thank you.
I'll be happy for Councillor Perry to go first if he likes to, but I can also take my own stance on that. John.
Yes, I'll leave it to you, Councillor Garton, to do the Chief Exec's question. But I just got a few points I wanted to make in response to what has been said. And I agree, it's not an easy. This is not an easy issue. I fully accept that. But you heard what Calc has said, and Calc carry a lot of weight. You know, they represent a lot of parish councils, and they're expert in this as well. I believe that Regulation 18B truncated is quite frankly a waste of time. I don't see the point of that. In fact, I think it gives a worse impression than actually having a full Regulation 18B. And then when I looked in the local development scheme, it quite clearly states that Regulation 18B is voluntary. So, you know, it actually says it in there. I also think that if you ask our residents, gave them the choice of a reasonable chance of maintaining the lower target or going out to a fuller consultation, I think they would take sorry, let me come back on this. Going for a lower target and going straight to Regulation 19, they would prefer that option rather than this so-called consultation. And at any rate, we talk about evidence, but we've been sitting on a load of evidence, I think as Councillor Bryce quite rightly pointed out. So I don't buy that argument one little bit. What we need to do is to try and use everything we can to keep the lower target figure, because if we end up with a higher target figure, then quite frankly, I think the whole thing is out of control, because we'll have a 3-year delivery target to meet, and that will be pretty well impossible. So either we try and get that down, or we go for the lower target. There is a risk. There's a high risk. I accept that. I think there's an even higher risk if we delay. I think speed is absolutely of the essence, and that's what we should be considering tonight. Thank you. But I'll hand over to Councillor Garton for summing up.
Now, before I go to Councillor Garton, I've had a point of order said by Councillor Gregg. Would you like to come in, Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just a point to say that could we please ensure that all the councillors are back online before any vote is taken? Okay. I will pass it over to Ryan, but at the end of the day, there is still a lot of us on here and we are trying to run a meeting. That's all I'm saying, is that you've got Julie to contact, you've got Ryan to contact. It was the message that the mayor could sort out, actually. No, I have put the message onto the IMs. Yes, Madam Mayor. I can see it.
Hey, thank you.
That's right. Okay. Thank you.
So, councillors, the position is that we are well above quorum for this meeting, so that the business can proceed, but it would be at the discretion of the chairman, in this case, the mayor.
So, do we wish to take this vote, or do we wish to?
Let's go to the vote.
Yes, let's go to the vote.
So, hang on, sorry, gents. Councillor Garton. Yeah, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. In answer to the question by the Chief Executive, I would put it for the officers to provide the speediest timeline to go straight to Regulation 19 and skip Regulation 18. I see the problem which we've got. We possibly can't win on either, but the worst scenarios that we die or that we get tremendous housing numbers thrust upon us in dying in planning terms. So we've got to be brave. We've got to be standing up for our community, take the bravest decision which we can take at local level, and that's why I recommend this amendment. Does that clear up your query, Madam Chief Executive?
No.
Chief Exec. Well, we just want, he said, as quick as sort of possible, so...
All right. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, basically to go straight to Regulation 19 on the quickest way possible. I'm sure the officers could then provide another draft of the timeline to SPI, but it is tonight's decision which actually delegates the power to provide a straight route to Regulation 19, delegates that to the officers.
Thank you. Chief Exec. You need to agree something, the timetable.
So as Madam Mayor has just asked me to intervene here, so we can demonstrate to you what that fastest timetable would be. And the reason for wanting to be quite precise about this is just so that people understand and have an appreciation of what that means. So in essence, the most speedy timetable would enable Regulation 19 consultation to be conducted in February, and that's 2021. And as I'm sure many of you are familiar with the risks around that, you've already debated it very, very extensively.
Mm-hmm.
So we have now displayed on the screen what that timetable would mean.
Madam Mayor, if I may, yes, that is exactly the sort of speediness I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
We may be expecting the guidance by the government for new housing formula as early as April, so February would do absolutely nicely, and it would protect this community.
Okay. Members are being asked by the Chief Executive if we would like to hear about any, risks, specific risks from an officer.
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So bear with us, please. Philip.
Hello, Madam Mayor. Is it okay for me to come in, Madam Mayor?
Yes, sure. Yeah, of course.
Thank you. I'm afraid I have no video at the moment, which is probably a good thing for everybody. But I suppose the from an officer perspective, just to reiterate the points that we've made previously, the Regulation 18B, whilst as Councillor Perry said, not being mandatory, given the degree of change that we're proposing, then we think it is absolutely sort of highly advisable that we do the Regulation 18B consultation, because it keeps us within the system in terms of the expectations of the Planning Inspectorate and MHCLG. Now, if we stay within those expectations and we subsequently find the new guidance dropping earlier than we would ideally like it to, we are on a platform of having been a good authority for many years, having always planned positively, had plans in place. That puts us in sort of less than 50% of the planning authorities in the country that have got that. And it puts us in a much better place to have a conversation with government about any flexibility that may exist, rather than potentially being perceived to try and sort of usurp the system. I think the other things that I'd sort of be duty bound to point out is the points of failure at Regulation 19. What some members have said about Regulation 19 being the quickest option is absolutely right. No argument with that. But there are two critical points of failure. The one is that we could do a Regulation 19 consultation, but then when we deposit our plan with the Planning Inspectorate, we could befall the fate of Uttlesford, for instance, where we get a letter and we don't even get invited to come along to an examination because they feel that what we've done isn't adequate. That would expose us to a time period and a significant cost while we go back and redo our evidence base and all of that. That could be, I haven't got the screen with the stuff that we'd put up previously, my apologies, but that's probably a 2-year delay. If we go to an examination and we fail at examination, that's obviously elongating the timeline, and that could be, a 2.5 year, a 3-year delay, a period that we find ourselves without a plan. If we start on the Reg 18B journey and something happens that means we have to go back to base on that, then we can shorten, depending on when it drops, we can shorten that period of exposure fairly considerably. So I think that's the reason that from an officer perspective, we think that, if the option's on the table, then we would recommend that we stay with the Regulation 18B consultation. I can also absolutely assure all members that even though we're suggesting that we take the consultation timeline for Regulation 18B down to 3 weeks, which, by the way, is not prescribed in any sort of legislation, that in the period between going to Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee at the beginning of November and starting the consultation at the end of November / beginning of December, we will have sort of pre-planned sessions with key stakeholders, with parish forums, with statutory undertakers. So we will effectively do that 6 weeks, and throughout the period from Regulation 18B to Regulation 19, we would make sure that we consult properly and completely with all of the statutory utilities. So I hope that helps members, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
And thank you, Phil. Louise, Bryce, Councillor Bryce, you coming back?
Yeah, point of order,
Sorry.
Madam Mayor. I did actually put my telephone
in the IM before, Louise.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to flag that, Marion. There's a lot going on, but also Phil's just kindly answered my question anyway. So over to you, Ashley, if that's okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. Now, all I was going to say was I got a call a little while ago and ended up in a call with Alison Broome and Councillor Fissenden, and then had to re-log in. So my issue is I'd like a roll call before we actually take the vote to make sure all members who have participated are still here. I know we're in quorum, but it would be nice to know that everybody who wants to vote is here to vote.
Okay. I'll pass
If I can
to Ryan.
If I can just clarify, the way in which we've set out the voting is that if we will go through where we don't get an answer from a member that we expect to be present, we'll give them a second chance to vote. But if a member doesn't respond to the vote, they're not assumed to be present at this point. So in essence, we carry out the roll call as part of the voting.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. So can we go to the vote on the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to be clear, this is on the amendment to go straight to Regulation 19 in accordance with and adopt the Local Development Scheme 2020 to 2022 that is shown on your screens currently. Councillor Atkinson.
Against.
Councillor Blackmore.
For.
Councillor Bryce.
For.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
Councillor David Burton.
For.
Councillor M. Burton.
For.
Councillor Chapel-Tay.
For.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Cumming. Councillor Cumming.
Yes. For.
Councillor Daly.
Against.
Councillor English.
Against.
Councillor Fermor.
Against.
Councillor Fissenden.
Against.
Councillor Fort.
For.
Councillor Garland.
Against.
Can I also ask Councillor Garland, do you have any disclosures?
None at all.
And any disclosures of lobbying?
None at all.
Thank you. Councillor Garton.
For.
Councillor Gooch.
Against.
Councillor Grigg.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Harvey.
Against.
Councillor Harwood.
Against.
Councillor Hasty.
Against.
Councillor Hinder.
For.
Councillor Joy.
Against.
Councillor Kadka.
Against.
Councillor Kimmins.
Against.
Councillor Lewins.
Against.
Councillor Mackay.
Against.
Councillor Mortimer.
Against.
Councillor Munford.
Against.
Councillor Nagy. Councillor Nagy.
Against. That's twice I voted.
Thank you. Councillor Newton.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed.
Abstain.
Councillor Perry.
For.
Councillor Powell.
Against.
Councillor Pearl.
Against.
Councillor Ring.
For.
Councillor Robertson.
Against.
Councillor D. Rose.
For.
Councillor M. Rose.
Against.
Councillor Round.
For.
Councillor J. Sams.
Against.
Councillor T. Sams.
Against.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Springett.
For.
Councillor Vizard.
Against.
Councillor Webb.
Against.
Councillor de Wigandine Shepherd.
Against.
Councillor Wilby.
And against.
And Councillor Young. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Councillor Young.
For.
Thank you. That concludes the voting. So we're just counting up the votes. 1 second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The voting on that amendment is 18 in favour, 32 against and 1 abstention.
So the amendment falls. So we now go back to the, yeah, go on. Does anybody wish to debate the standard motion?
It's all been said, Madam Mayor.
It's all been said. Okay, so we go forward on that then. Can we move to the vote, please? Again, I'll pass you over to Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is now voting for the items, recommendations you can see on the screen in front of you. Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Blackmore.
For.
Councillor Bryce.
Against.
Councillor Brindle. Councillor Brindle. I'll come back. Councillor D. Burton.
Abstain.
Councillor M. Burton.
I feel I have to say against, having supported the amendment.
Councillor Chapel-Tay.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Cumming.
Abstain.
Councillor Daly.
For.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Fermor.
For.
Councillor Fissington.
For.
Councillor Fort.
Abstain.
Councillor Garland.
For.
Councillor Garton.
Against, and that I'd like to have that minuted, please.
Councillor Gooch.
For.
Councillor Grigg.
For.
Councillor Harper.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Harwood.
For.
Councillor Hasty.
For.
Councillor Hinder.
Abstain.
Councillor Joy.
For.
Councillor Kacker.
For.
Councillor Kimmins.
For.
Councillor Lewins.
For.
Councillor Mackay.
For.
Councillor Mortimer.
For.
Councillor Mumford.
For.
Councillor Nagy.
For.
Councillor Newton.
Against.
Councillor Parfitt Reid.
Abstain.
Councillor Perry.
Against.
Councillor Powell.
Abstain.
Councillor Pearl.
Abstain.
Councillor Ring.
Abstain.
Councillor Robertson,
4.
Councillor D. Rose,
Against.
Councillor M. Rose,
4.
Councillor Round,
Abstain.
Councillor J. Sams,
4.
Councillor T. Sams,
4.
Councillor Spooner,
Against.
Councillor Springett,
Abstain.
Councillor Vizard,
4.
Councillor Webb,
4.
Councillor de Wigandine Shepherd,
4.
Councillor Wilby,
4.
and Councillor Young.
Abstain.
And Councillor Brindle.
Sorry, my mute wouldn't unmute me, but I'm abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the voting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The voting on the original motion is 32 in favour, 7 against and 12 abstentions.
Then the motion is carried. Councillor Burton?
Madam Mayor, would you just indulge me to add one comment as a footnote to this item? And that is that, you know, whilst the outcome of the vote may not be everybody's preference, I am sure that we are all still united to make the will of council work, and we will do our damnedest to deliver on this local development scheme, this timetable, to do our very best to get the lowest number for Maidstone. So just because we didn't necessarily get our personal way, it does not mean that we're all, and I'm sure I speak for everybody, that we're all totally committed to making this work for the best outcome for Maidstone.
Well said, David.
Well said, David.
Councillor Burton.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well done. Hear, hear.
Excellent stuff.
Now, as life goes, we now move on. We're now on to item 16. I call upon Councillor Atkinson to move his motion relating to anti-idling.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to think that the motion is self-explanatory and doesn't need much amplification, but I will amplify anyway. As it says in the briefing note we got this afternoon, Maidstone Borough Council adopted its low emissions strategy in December 2017. Our current strategy is simply education and, I quote, promotion to encourage better practice. However, the December 2017 document also stated, and I quote again, the Council will explore the adoption of enforcement powers should the educational approach need reinforcement. Well, we believe that the time has come 3 years on to do this. The voluntary approach clearly hasn't worked. You only have to walk anywhere in Maidstone to see vehicles of all descriptions with engines idling, pumping out noxious fumes, or come to Farley Lane in my own ward of Fant, when traffic is queuing, often up as far as Glebe Lane and beyond, whilst waiting at the closed level crossing, and of course on the other side of Farley Bridge up Station Hill. Most vehicles leave their engines idling, despite the sign urging drivers to switch them off. Paragraph 3.2 of this afternoon's briefing note says that leaving your engine idling unnecessarily can be problematic to enforce. I think this is a spurious argument. It's a bit like the word reasonable used in so many legal situations. What is reasonable can usually be resolved satisfactorily, and I also believe that the meaning of unnecessarily can be resolved in a similar manner by using common sense. In fact, earlier I understood Councillor D. Burton to say that Maidstone Borough Council has recommended in its submission to government that we enforce against unnecessary pavement parking. That word unnecessary. I'd also refer members to paragraph 3.4 of the briefing note, which explains very succinctly some of the dangers of idling engines. Maidstone Borough Council needs to be seen to be taking its commitments to climate change and public health seriously. One way to do this is to adopt Regulation 12. I therefore move that this Council adopts Regulation 12 as a matter of urgency. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. Do I have a seconder to
Yes, I
Councillor
seconded
Atkinson?
it.
Sorry?
Councillor Harper, I
Oh,
seconded
sorry.
it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so second by Councillor Harper.
And I reserve my right to reply.
Okay. In accordance with the Council's Procedure Rule 18.5, the motion having been formally moved and seconded will be referred to the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee. However, we can debate this in full council, subject to normal debating rules. A factual briefing note has been sent round. Been circulated to assist members in the discussion. Is there anybody wishing to speak? Got no one on my list.
Madam Mayor, both myself and Councillor Garton do appear to have indicated.
Okay.
And myself, Derek Mortimer, please.
Right.
And me as well, I indicated.
And Councillor Commance as well, I've indicated.
I don't know where we're all jumping to here. Sorry. Bear with me.
It's all on the IM, Madam Mayor.
Councillor English, if I start with you first and I'll sort everything out.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was in two minds about proceeding immediately to this when we had the low emissions working group, and I was sort of talked out of it, can go to an educational effort first. I think that we've done some education, but like every other aspect where we've looked at enforcement in the past, education only goes so far. When we're faced with the situation we are in Maidstone, with our congestion and our pollution and our other issues, I think we have to use every tool that is potentially available to deal with these issues. I believe that Councillor Atkinson and Councillor Harper's motion should be supported, and that when it goes to SPI, that we should be looking at taking these enforcement powers. I believe actually there are other areas we should be looking at as well. Having said that, there are one or two wrinkles of details in relation to public service vehicles and taxis that we will need to resolve when this discussion goes to SPI, because there are operational nuances in how we do this, which I'm sure Councillor Commance will address some attention to it in due course. But I have to say, overall, subject to how we bring this in, this is the right approach, and other councils elsewhere in the country have been successful in using this power. We owe it to the people of Maidstone to start enforcing against polluters.
Thank you. Right, can I call on Councillor Garton now, please?
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. It really gets my goat when people sit in the supermarket car park or any car park all over the town and just keep idling the engines. In the summer for the air conditioning, in the winter for the heating. It really is neither good for the engine and nor is it good for the environment. And most of all, research has actually shown that people don't even realize how costly it is for themselves, for their own purse, for the wear and tear of their car, and for the environment. However, we've got to take this to committee because the law is very vague on this. What is unnecessary idling, as some previous speakers already mentioned? In the Crown against McDonough in 1974, it was held that a man was not driving by using his shoulder against the door pillar to push the car. And the Court of Appeal held that the essence of driving was the use of the driver's controls in order to direct the movement of the car. But additional, the word driving must be given its ordinary meaning. However, then in Pinner against Everett in 1977, a vehicle may be driven even when it is stationary. So I think we need some sort of training here, and the training to our enforcement staff should be directed along the lines of Edkins against Knowles of 73. What is the purpose of the stop connected with the driving? How long was the stop? And did they get out? If not, is that an indication, although not conclusive, that they are still driving? So I would be very careful for sending enforcement officers out for finding people sitting in traffic jams, as has been suggested here. I think I read in between the lines of some of my previous speakers. On the other hand, if people are sitting in a car park and idling unnecessarily their engines, if I would be the king of the world, I would actually put £1,000 fine on it, not a £20 fine. So indeed, I have full support for this to be taken to committee. And one more time, and I think Councillor English already said that before, taxis are a very important case here. Under health and safety at work regulations, taxi drivers cannot be expected to be cold in their cab. However, they sit on the cab rank all night. And how can they keep themselves warm? Now, I've been harping on as a member of the licensing committee for about 2 years to get a report about incentives for taxi drivers to have night heaters installed, heaters which are separate from the engine. So if this report, whenever it comes to committee, would please consider also the installation of night heaters which are separate from the engine for taxi drivers, and what sort of incentives we can provide there. And if Councillor Harper would like to take that into his motion this point, I would be very grateful.
Can I now call on Councillor Mortimer, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I mean, in principle, I do support this, and I will be supporting it to go to committee. But I would like to sort of emphasise regarding the education and persuasion we can use with the public, because at the end of the day, we ran for 2 years, as you're well aware, Madam Mayor, that we did the Clean Schools campaign, and that was highly successful. We got a huge uptake on that. We involved parents. The children had a competition. We put banners outside the schools, and we got great feedback from mums and dads, basically, from that. And we won an award with the KM as well, as I might add that. But I've looked at some of the towns that have taken this on, and various areas. For example, Norwich was one of the first areas to take this on. They haven't, in the first year, they didn't have any fines at all, but they did issue 27 warnings. Reading, no fines in the first year. Southwark, I've only had 5 fines in the first year. Richmond, I've had 1 fine in the first year of implementation. So I've got my doubts about this. If we go forward with it, as I said, I'm all for education and awareness as well. And I really think we ought to go down that route again. The other thing is, as well, as mentioned just now, is that the legislation only says unnecessary idling, which is down to interpretation and virtually unenforceable. So unless the government give us the tools, like many things we have to do in our council, we cannot act 100% like we all really want to. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mortimer. Ashley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm stepping forward. I'll give you a date. The 15th of April 1967, that's when we really made a big mistake in Maidstone. We got rid of the trolley bus system. That was the greenest energy we had in Maidstone. It was a small system, but it worked, and it worked perfectly. That was if the guy remembered to put the power on down at the bottom of the high street. But moving on to what Councillor Garton said about the taxis, it's a brilliant idea. But what you've got to remember is that the taxi drivers have made an investment between £40,000 and £60,000. So if the heater system is going to be implicated, that's fine. But there needs to be grants to obviously, because the guys are there and they're trying to make a living, and to give them an extra expense is something else. But what you've got to remember is what we've implicated in the past is the strict rules. And one of the rules is that the cabs meet Euro 6 on the emissions. So all of the taxis meet the Euro 6, which means that the emissions are so low. And just to give you an example, it goes on how much road tax you pay. Now, the vehicle that I drive, I pay £20 a year for the road tax on it. And I do believe that the buses are exactly the same. They have to meet the Euro 5 or Euro 6 by a certain date. I don't know whether it's met as the same date as the taxis, but I know that the taxis on the taxi rank now meet Euro 6, and we've also got some electric taxis on the rank as well. So I would worry that because we don't work as the same as London, we don't get flagged down in the street. They have to sit on a taxi rank, so they have to idle. As Councillor Garton said, in the winter time it's cold. In the summertime, it's hot. So you need to have that engine idling. And a lot of them have start-stop technology. So it doesn't idle all the time. And because you're sat in one place, you are going to be like, if somebody's going to give you a ticket, it's easy to walk up and down a taxi rank because they know you're going to be there. You're not moving, and it's the same as a bus stop. If a bus is sat in a bus stop idling, you know where he's going to be. You're going to give him a ticket. That's the only thing that really worries me is they know where to find you and they know where you're going to be. Okay, I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon now Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, when this comes back to SPI, which I'm sure it will be, it's a good motion. It's what we all would agree with the concessions that have been mentioned. I would ask that this coincide with the Upper Stone Street Air Quality Update report, which is on the work programme, because that item, which myself and Councillor English brought to the committee or brought to the work programme, very much was to do with cars sitting idling on that major part of or major air pollution hotspot between the gyratory system along Bishop's Way and up Stone Street. And the factors that we're considering with that include the fact that cars sit there idling on the double yellers, and they and not only do they cause problems with pollution from the exhaust gases, they also cause pollution because of the congestion they cause when in rush hour traffic completely stops at one of the worst pollution hotspots in Maidstone. So I do really think that we should be doing these things together rather than having two separate reports. But I very much welcome this coming back to committee.
Yeah, this is what we're asking, isn't we? If we're going back to committee, and I'm sure that it sounds like it's going to be an exciting one. Right, Councillor Perry, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm happy for it to go to committee. I can support it in principle, but I do have one or two concerns, actually. I mean, the first of all, I don't want this turning into an anti-car crusade, which that always worries me when I see things like this. I think Councillor Kimmons mentioned that modern cars do have a sort of anti-idling facility. My own car cuts out on that basis, and modern cars are considerably cleaner. The 2 points I have really on this is that the definition of what is a stationary vehicle seems to be pretty flaky, and I think that's something we will need to be considered by the committee, and that leads on to how will this actually be enforced. I think Councillor Mortimer gave some very good examples of perhaps lack of enforcement, so I think these are all issues that the committee will need to discuss and look into, so we can't rush into a decision. But I mean, in principle, obviously one couldn't object to it, but we'd also remember that it's been a council decision to go for electric vehicles. I think hybrids and then electrics were in the decision some months ago now, but that's on the cards at any rate. So, but there's a lot for this committee to discuss. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Can before I call Councillor Gooch, can I just make it aware? We've got lots, and it's been a very long agenda. We've got lots more to go tonight. And all I'm saying is that I will be calling for a vote that this finishes at 11 o'clock, this meeting. So I think we really need to be thinking with our questions. If the questions have already been asked, why are we asking again? So we can move on to the next subject. So on that, I call Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That brings us to item 17. There are a group of amendments to be made to the Constitution. They are clearly set out on your page 78 from the various committees, and so I move.
Councillor Gooch, you were being called to speak in the debate on the motion, not to jump to item 17.
Do you know what? It wouldn't register on my IM.
We have you on the list.
In that case, the one point I do apologise. The one point I quickly wanted to make on this item, on item 16, was the resourcing. We've got a budgetary problem. We need to take into account the staffing, the training and the overall resourcing for any extra work that our enforcement officers are required to make. And I think that's quite an important point given the budgetary situation we've got over the coming years. Thank you. And I apologise for my mistake.
And I call upon Councillor David Burton, and that will be the last time that I take. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to be really brief. I applaud the intentions of the motion. I really do. The type of motion that comes from the same pundits that will promote 20-mile-an-hour speed limits that increase emissions. I think there's a danger that we're looking backwards at yesterday's problems, and we're not putting enough focus into today and tomorrow's solutions. I don't feel guilty having my air conditioning on when I'm sat in the supermarket car park because it's electric and it's charged from solar panels. And I really think we should be putting the efforts into moving forwards and not looking back at the relics of the past, the vehicles that quite frankly just shouldn't be on the road anymore. As Councillor Kimmons has pointed out, the higher Euro standards are a totally different kettle of fish, and these issues, don't exist as we move into the near future. So I applaud the intentions, but I think it's backward looking, and we should be looking forwards.
Councillor Harper, I call you because you have a right to reply.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this has been quite an interesting discussion, and Keith and myself welcome, obviously, the support we've received for this idea tonight. Going back to Councillor Burton's point, new vehicles are much less polluting. However, at the moment, most of the vehicles on the road definitely aren't. And, we live in an area which is heavily dominated by diesel vehicles, and the emissions and the particulates they give out while they're idling. Where I live, immediately opposite me, I've got 3 secondary schools and a primary school, and I only have to go out at the times when schools are coming in going out just to see the number of vehicles which are idling and the pollution being chucked out. I think if we should take this forward, and hopefully when it goes to SPI it will be taken forward. I'm sure Keith and I would welcome the idea of looking at the issue of night heaters and what might be able to be done for in terms of taxis and so on. But one of the things I think we should also look at when we do take the report back to strategic planning and infrastructure is what are other councils doing. And I would suggest, for instance, places like Islington, which have been very successful in terms of idling and so on. Perhaps we could talk to councils such as Islington to actually find out how they do it, what was involved in doing it, and so on, because I think that will just enable us to take this forward in a positive way. So I'm glad it looks like the motion is going to be supported this evening, and we can discuss it further at committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So, does everybody? Yeah, the motion now stands referred to the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you.
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Agreed.
Hysteria. Right, now we go down to item 17. I call upon the... Sorry? Item 17. I call upon the Head of Policy and Communication Governance to submit a report to the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Thank you. Mrs. Gooch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As it is late in the day, I was simply going to move the papers as set out in the recommendation on page 78.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
I'll second that. Councillor Joy.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishes to speak?
Agreed.
Is there Councillor Webb?
Yes, sorry. Councillor
try-
Joy got into second
okay.
before me, so thank you.
Right, thank you. If there's no one else to speak, is the recommendation agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Yes. Now we're on number item 18. I called upon the Head of Policy and Communication and Governance to submit a report to Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Is that seconded?
Oh, how about I propose it?
Sorry?
I think I'm due to propose it, aren't I, Madam Mayor, not second it? This is item 18. This is review of the seat allocations.
Right. Well, that wasn't on my papers, so...
Okay.
Can I just pause for a moment, please, Councillor Cox? What's going on?
What's going on? We should go on.
Yeah, I wish I knew.
Madam Mayor?
Just a moment.
Sorry, I lost connection for a moment there, Madam Mayor.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. I need to move the amended appendix as well. So that's the amended Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. Not move them, but commend them to Council for approval.
Okay. I would then like to move, Madam Mayor, that the allocation of seats on the committees be set out in amended Appendix 1. To report to the Head of Policy and Communications and Governance, which has been circulated separately. Or am I saying this is an amendment?
You are moving it, Councillor Cox.
I am moving, that's what I thought, yeah.
Things.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm happy to second Councillor Gooch.
Okay, also part 2 is that the wishes of the group leaders with regard to the membership of committees is as set out in the schedule circulated separately be accepted. That is item 18. And it's been seconded by Councillor Gooch, did I hear?
Yes, you did indeed hear correctly.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm so sorry, councillors. Right. Yeah. So now I've got to ask Councillor Perry to move an amendment and. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I apologise, Madam Mayor, I was slightly lost. The amendment, has everybody got the table of the amendment? That's been...
No,
because
I'll put it up on the screen now, Councillor Perry.
Oh, right, because I think that's quite important.
Thought we were going to a vote there.
Where is it? Oh, it doesn't matter. So I'll speak and then hopefully the table will come up. I realise you've probably heard this before, but we are living in what I would call exceptional times. And the last time this country experienced a pandemic on this scale actually was in 1918. And that was the Spanish flu. As many of you know, I've always been a strong advocate of maintaining some sort of political balance if the committee system that we are currently operate is to work effectively. As we know, the service committees have both scrutiny and decision-making roles. But there are exceptions, and sometimes we have to take a pragmatic approach, and I believe this is one of those occasions. As already emphasised, we're not in a normal situation. We have sadly lost 2 members, and because of the pandemic, we're unable to hold any by-elections where the political balance can be properly addressed. So I would suggest that adjusting for political balance at this point in time is not just unfair, but it might not be in line with reality. Therefore, given the above, I believe we should take into account these exceptional circumstances and retain the current allocations until the matter can be properly sorted out at the elections next May, when the will of our residents can be properly respected. We are only talking about 7 months, and making changes now does not seem to be appropriate. I would therefore like to move that the following: that the proposed seat allocations be amended so as to match the table displayed to members that reflects the original seat allocations agreed in May 2019, and that the wishes of group leaders be agreed following the meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And you have the table in front.
Perry. Is there do you have a seconder?
Point of order, Madam Chairman. If there's an objection, and there is one from me, it can't proceed.
Why is that?
Because...
Point of order, Section 17, 1989 Housing Act.
As Councillor Pearl said, an arrangement to waive proportionality on council committees must be unanimous from all councillors. It is not unanimous because I formally object. Therefore, the amendment cannot proceed.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no point in debating it.
Okay, so what I moved.
Thank you very much for that one.
what I moved in the first place, as you have before you, 1 and 2 has been seconded. Over to you, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So is that an agreement?
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Agreed. I'll
Thank you,
formally abstain if you
councillors.
don't mind. I'm not putting
Sorry.
my thing to that.
Sorry.
I formally abstain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, abstain.
I abstain as well, Councillor Valspringett.
I think, should we just do a vote if we're...
I think it's
I
really
would like
unfair
to
what's
know
been
my-
done.
Name vote then, name vote.
Name
Let's have a
vote.
name vote. I really think if Councillor English wants to take that line, then he has to stand up over the parapet and we all vote. Thank you.
Quite happy to defend the law, Councillor Perry.
Okay, councillors.
I wasn't breaking the law. I was
Councillors.
just being pragmatic.
Councillors, please. We will now do a name vote. Thank you. Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Atkinson.
Can you just clarify, we're voting for the original proposal?
Correct. The politically balanced seat allocations as negotiated by group leaders.
Right, thank you. 4.
4. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. That was Councillor Blackmore. Councillor Bryce.
Against.
Councillor Brindle.
Against.
Councillor Burton. D. Burton.
4.
Councillor M. Burton.
4.
Councillor Chapel-Tay.
Abstain.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cox.
4.
Councillor Cumming.
Abstain.
Councillor Daly. Or has he left the meeting?
He's left.
Councillor English.
4.
Councillor Fermor.
4.
Councillor Fissenden.
4.
Councillor Fort. Councillor Fort. I'll come back. Councillor Garland.
4.
Councillor Garton.
Abstain.
Councillor Gooch.
4.
Councillor Grigg.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Harwood.
4.
Councillor Hasty.
4.
Councillor Hinder.
4.
Councillor Joy. So 4.
It was 4.
Yep. Councillor Katka.
4.
Councillor Kimmins.
Can you just clarify for me? You said
No.
that this was agreed by group leaders.
Correct.
Well, why are we voting but for?
Okay. Councillor Owens.
4.
Councillor Mackay.
Abstain.
Councillor Mortimer.
How can you do that?
Sorry, Councillor Mortimer, I didn't catch that.
4.
Councillor Munford.
4.
Councillor Nagy.
4.
Councillor Newton. Councillor Newton.
It's not there.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Against.
Councillor Powell.
Abstain.
Councillor Pearl.
4.
Councillor Ring.
4.
Councillor Robertson.
4.
Councillor D. Rose.
Abstain.
Councillor M. Rose.
4.
Councillor J. Sams. Oh, they've left, I think. Oh, Councillor Round.
Abstain.
I believe the Sams have left the meeting. Councillor Spooner.
Abstain.
Councillor Springett.
Abstain.
Councillor Vizard.
4.
Councillor Webb.
4.
Councillor de Wigandine Shepherd.
4.
Councillor Wilby.
4.
And Councillor Young.
Abstain.
Okay, just one moment while we tally up the votes.
Oh yeah.
We had Councillor Fort. I didn't get a response from Councillor Fort. And Councillor Newton. Okay, we'll assume they're absent. Thank you.
Anyone there?
They're counting, Councillor
in.
Nagy.
They're just counting.
It just went so quiet.
A lot of counting.
Hello,
The
hello
most of the
members.
piece, then.
The counting has been concluded now, and the vote for that is 33 in favour, 3 against, and 10 abstentions.
So that's agreed. Thank you. Next item is 18. Yeah, do you want us, should we take a vote to see to extend it to 11 o'clock? Councillors?
Yes, please, Mrs. Mayor.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
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 Okay.
Agreed.
Can I just check, is that you all agreeing on a vote, or are you agreeing to extend? Because I'm
No,
not.
we're agreeing
Agreeing
to
to
vote.
extend,
Agree
I
to
think.
extend.
No, we're not.
Vote.
Exactly.
Does anyone not want to extend?
Me.
Well, I
Yes.
don't want to.
I
It's
don't want to
20
extend.
past 10,
I don't
crying
want
out
to
loud.
extend. I don't think.
Yeah, but do we have to agree with that comment? I'd rather not. Adjourn it.
Right, then I'm sorry, I'm going to have a name vote. Because everybody's arguing between themselves, which is unacceptable, please, people. So, right, then we'll go to a name vote. Can I have a name vote, please? For or not? Yes.
For what?
For extending the meeting.
We're having a vote for whether to extend the meeting or not.
Okay.
Councillor Atkinson.
4.
Councillor Blackmore.
Against.
Councillor Bryce.
Against.
Councillor Brindle.
Against.
Councillor Burton. D. Burton.
4. Well, sorry.
Councillor M. Burton.
Given that I've taken all this time to write the bleeding calling letter, I'm going to say 4.
Councillor Chapel-Tay.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cox.
4.
Councillor Cumming.
4.
Councillor Daly. He's left the meeting. Councillor English.
4.
Councillor Fermor.
4.
Councillor Fissenden.
4.
Councillor Fort, who I believe has left the meeting. Councillor Garland.
Rude not to, so 4.
Councillor Garton.
Against, because I think we will need more than half an hour to debate this.
Oh, what?
Councillor Gooch.
Against.
Councillor Grigg.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Harwood.
4.
Councillor Hasty.
4.
Councillor Hinder.
Abstain.
Councillor Joy.
4.
Councillor Kaka.
4.
Councillor Kimmins.
4.
Councillor Lewins.
4.
Councillor Mackay.
Reluctantly 4.
Councillor Mortimer,
Definitely 4.
Councillor Mumford,
4.
Councillor Nagy.
4.
Just double check that Councillor Newton's not here. No, Councillor Parfitt-Reed.
4.
Councillor Perry,
Reluctantly 4.
Councillor Powell,
Against.
Councillor Pearl,
Against.
Councillor Ring,
4.
Councillor Robertson,
Against, as we need more time to discuss this important issue.
Councillor D. Rose,
4.
Councillor M. Rose,
4.
Councillor Round.
Against.
The Sams have left, so Councillor Spooner,
4.
Councillor Springett,
Against, as I don't think we'll have enough time to properly debate the issue and we're all tired.
Councillor Vizard,
That's true, actually.
Councillor Vizard,
Sorry, that was me. Against.
Councillor Webb,
4.
Councillor de Wigadeen Shepherd,
4, but I agree that we've run out of time.
Councillor Wilby,
4.
and Councillor Young.
4.
Okay, so the decision to extend the meeting has been carried. So we will be able to continue until 11 o'clock, and then any other business that is remaining will be rolled over to an adjourned date.
So where are we going straight to
19.
19?
Yep.
I disagree with that.
I call upon.
We've got to come out of this and go into a new.
No, not yet.
No, can I?
Not quite
Not
yet.
yet. We're still in
19.
part 1.
Members, can we please let the Mayor
Right.
control the meeting? Thank you.
I call upon the Head of Policy and Communication Governance to submit a report to the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Is there a second?
Seconded, Madam Mayor. Councillor Cox.
Yeah. Can you move it?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I thought you were moving it. Sorry. I'm happy to move the motion as on papers.
No, second.
Everybody agree?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agree.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The Council is now acting as corporate trustee of the Queen's Own Royal West Kent Regiment Museum Trust. I call upon the Head of Policy and Communication and Governance to submit a report to Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Is that seconded?
I'll propose the motion, Madam Mayor.
And
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
I'll second it.
Please say who that is.
Can I
Daniel
have a
Rose.
name, please?
Daniel
Daniel
Rose.
Rose.
Daniel, thank you. Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Agreed.
Right. Item 21. The Council is now acting as the local authority. I call upon the Head of Policy, Communication and Governance to submit a report to the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I propose the motion as set out on papers.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cox. Everybody agree?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
So now we're on to item number 21. Just done 21, sorry.
Sorry, I think there's been some confusion here as to which item we were on at that point. So just to be clear, we are now on item 21.
Yeah.
That's what we just voted on.
Yeah. We're done.
Sorry.
Isn't that meant to be in part 2?
Well, nobody needed to go to part 2 because nobody indicated. We were told
No
that the
one
council is now
discussed.
acting as the local authority.
Yes.
It was then commended by Head of Policy and nobody then stepped in. I proposed the motion. It was seconded.
I'm sorry. There's
Right,
been
can
some
I-
confusion over which agenda item we were on here.
Oh,
I was
yeah, me
expecting
too.
to
Can
be
I,
asked
can
to
I,
speak
can
to
I
the
have a
call.
bit of decorum, people, and a bit of quieting? All right. this is what's happening. People are getting tired and getting short-tempered. Will you just bear with us, please? The council is now acting as a local authority. No, that's not right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if I can just explain.
I'm sorry, Matt. I know you've worked really hard on this. Officers are just trying to sort out what's. Can I pass you over to Ryan?
Madam
Okay.
Mayor, I put something in the IM that I'd like to move that we adjourn the meeting. I think the meeting is failing. The decision making beyond this point is clearly not going to be suitable. Are you able to adjourn the meeting, Madam Mayor?
I entirely agree with you. I'm listening to people moaning and groaning in my ear. Yeah, it's just not working out. I know you voted. But I have the authority to close the meeting down. I think it's been to adjourn because I think it's been a very long. Can I, Chief Exec? Can I do that?
Well said, Mrs. Mayor.
I think that's a good decision.
Do you have to take another vote?
Me too. Good decision.
Okay. Can I just ask you to, in the politest way possible, just perhaps remain silent for a few moments?
Can I move the motion to adjourn, councillors? I think
I'll second it if you need someone to second it, Marion.
You're happy to second it for me?
Yes, Councillor Blackmore, I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Are you in agreement, councillors?
Yes.
Yes. Can we
Yes.
just clarify that we've not accidentally sleepwalked into voting on 21, please?
No.
I believe we
No.
have.
What? Who not?
So just to clarify, we've all sleepwalked into voting on 21 and we're just all cool with that, yeah?
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
It's made.
No, we have not voted on 21.
Really?
I'm listening to you all. I know myself. I don't feel that you're going to be giving the right vote. There's got people moaning in my ears. You're grunting between yourselves. Do you really think this is it? If you think this is the way to go ahead, I'm more than happy. But if you're not, and we adjourn and we come back to this at another time, that's entirely down to you. So what is it you want me to do?
It's your prerogative as mayor.
Madam Mayor, you can adjourn the meeting.
Then I'm adjourning the meeting.
Well said, Marion.
Can I please just clarify the stage of the meeting that we're at, so we're ready to pick it up when we next.
We
come back.
finished with item 20. We
Yes.
have not started item
Okay.
21. I make that very clear.
That's correct.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, can I make a point of order? We've only got to look back at the YouTube, and we will see how far we got.
On a point of order, the mayor's decision is final. On a point of
You're right.
Exactly.
Quite
So,
correct.
so do we say
Thank
good
you.
night then?
Thank you very much for your time tonight, everybody. We will be getting in contact with you as soon as possible when we
Good night.
come back to this.
Okay.
Well done, Marion, and sorry
Thank
for
you, Marion.
such a
Thank you,
Thank you
Madam
very
Mayor.
much.
Good night,
Good
to you
night,
all.
everybody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.